In the week since Charlie Kirk was killed, lots of people have come to a disturbing realization, and that is, they are living alongside thousands, possibly even millions of people who want them to suffer the same fate. They want to see you dead. They want to see you killed in front of your wife. They will mock her as she is mourning over your casket. They want your children orphaned, castrated, and poisoned against you by an ideology that, because it cannot reproduce, it recruits. There are three groups of people in the United States, in my country, Great Britain, across Europe, across the English-speaking and Western world. Number one, people who thought like Charlie. People who believe in the inviolable dignity of innocent human beings, per the doctrine of Imago Dei. People who hold to the Christian faith that built our liberal individualist understanding of human nature and human rights. People who think that they can engage in good faith with interlocutors with whom they disagree and resolve their disputes with debate and work together on the shared premise that they are both trying to better their civilizations. Group number two, people who disagree with Charlie but still behave in the same polite and cordial way that he did. Charlie Kirk made converts of many liberals and college campuses, whether to change their mind on certain issues, or at least engage in good faith on televised debates, because they believed in the same principle that he did. Unfortunately, that group is vanishingly small. The third group are people who celebrated his death, who want to call for more violence against people who think like him, and who are creating, funding, and amplifying the permission structures for political violence and leftist terrorism. And all of the excuses of Charlie's murder, the celebration of his death, and the call for violence against other people who agree with him are all promises to repeat his savage assassination against people like me and you. And the worst part about this is that not only are they celebrating it, they are schizophrenically lying about Charlie Kirk's accused killer. They are at once claiming his death, Charlie Kirk's death, as a victory for their political side, while also blaming the right with no evidence whatsoever. And so, today, I am going to go through a timeline of the events of the last week. The political response to Charlie's killing, the facts about the shooter, his broader network, his potential co-conspirators, his transsexual lover, his family who turned him in, the engravings on the bullet casings that show that this man was indoctrinated by leftist ideology. And then we're going to name and shame a number of outlets, commentators, politicians, and everyday people who have been celebrating Charlie's savage murder. Because we cannot live like this, and we cannot live alongside these people. And so the only way to prevent an escalation to tit-for-tat vigilante violence, which I do not want to see because I don't want to see more people killed like Charlie Kirk in front of their family, no matter what they believe, the only way to prevent an escalation to this kind of violence is for the Trump administration to step in and, as promised, bring the full force of the law down on these Antifa, leftist, terror cells, and broader sponsorship networks, like the Open Society Foundation, their allies in the press, who have turned themselves into Radio Rwanda for America, promising violence, justifying violence, against conservatives, Christians, and their fellow Americans because of their race, their religion, and their membership of the Republican Party. Charlie Kirk's accused murderer is Tyler Robinson. He grew up in Utah to a conservative, Mormon, Christian family, and his father, a veteran of the sheriff's department, when he found out what his son had done, had turned him in. Now, he may be the beneficiary of reward money promised by billionaire and friend of Charlie Kirk's, Bill Ackman, but I think we should first say that the father did the right thing. We should be living in a culture where if your son has done something heinously wrong, you should not protect him, you should hand him over to the authorities. And so, and we're still waiting for all the facts of the case to come out, but it seems like the father has done the right thing in these circumstances. As the Wall Street Journal reports, Robinson went from a top student raised by parents who were registered Republicans in a Mormon stronghold in southwest Utah to a suspected assassin who authorities said targeted one of the country's most popular conservative youth leaders. Robinson was, in the past, registered as nonpartisan, so he is not repeating the Republican voting patterns of his parents. Remember this when people accuse him of being on the right. He also wore a t-shirt associated with a veterans organization in order to fit in with the crowd. So he was cosplaying as a Charlie Kirk fan to slip by undetected to get to his vantage point where he could shoot Kirk dead with his rifle live on camera. Utah Governor Spencer Cox said one of Tyler Robinson's family members told investigators Tyler had become more political in recent years. The family member said at a recent dinner, Robinson and a second relative discussed Charlie Kirk's upcoming event on the Utah Valley campus, where Kirk was killed, in Orem. Quote, they talked about why they didn't like him, Kirk, and the viewpoints that he had. Cox, a Republican, said at a news briefing on Friday. The governor had thanked the family for doing the right thing by turning him in. Like many boys in the area, Robinson grew up hunting and was well versed in the use of firearms, according to law enforcement officials. Photos shared on social media show the family shooting rifles. Cox said, it's very clear to us and to the investigators that this was a person who was deeply indoctrinated with leftist ideology, he told the Wall Street Journal. A person familiar with the investigation said the information about Robinson's views came from conversations with his family. There's more details from this Telegraph report where it says that Tyler Robinson has confessed to killing Charlie Kirk. We've had contradictory reports since saying that Robinson had not confessed. Robinson is also currently on suicide watch in his cell. The authorities should be doing everything possible to ensure this man stays alive and is forced to give answers before the country that he has just plunged into mourning. FBI Director Kash Patel went on Fox News today to say that they have obtained text in which Tyler Robinson said that if he had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, he would have taken it. So, we have written confirmation that Tyler Robinson engaged in the premeditated murder of Charlie Kirk. This will still go to trial, of course. However, we seem to have a mountain of evidence here that shows that Tyler Robinson is the man because he believed that Charlie Kirk preached some hatred which could not be negotiated with. Now, I think this is the realization that conservatives have had, is that there are some people on the left who themselves equate speech to violence and will respond with violence in kind. And so, despite the patient and compassionate conversations that Charlie Kirk was famous for having, you can only have those with the category of people who engage in good faith. The leftists who believe that speech is violence cannot be debated with, they cannot be negotiated with. They are willing to kill you for having discussions. And so the time for debate with those people is over. It died with Charlie Kirk. The New York Post, elaborating on Kash Patel's interview from Fox News, says that Patel noted evidence had been collected through witness interviews showing that Robinson essentially admitted to killing Kirk after the September 10th shooting. The suspect admitted to it, without going into detail and noting that he would not stylize the evidence. When asked if the FBI was probing the potential for a wider plot, Patel indicated the investigation is ongoing. Quote, we're dedicating every asset we have to reverse the daisy chain analysis of anyone that was in contact with the suspect that's currently in custody and anyone he contacted, called, and text messaged and had chats online and social media platforms with. And there seems to be some evidence that he was engaging in such. Now, if there was any doubt about Robinson's views, there was a family member quoted in this piece in The Guardian, published last Friday on the 12th of September, when he was caught. In a phone interview Friday, one of Robinson's high school friends, who asked to remain anonymous, said that Robinson was, quote, pretty left on everything, and the only member of his family that was, like, really leftist. The rest of his family was very hard Republican, like, gun-loving, everything. He was really the only one that was on the left. The friend said he was stunned when he saw the news on Friday that Robinson was the suspect in the Kirk case. Quote, I knew he had strong political views, but I never thought it would even go near that far. CBS News reported being told by multiple federal law enforcement officers that Robinson's father confronted him after recognizing him in surveillance images released by officials on Thursday. Robinson admitted that he was the person in the photos, and his father urged him to surrender to investigators, the network reported. So, people who knew Robinson, went to school with Robinson, knew his views. Now, this quote is mysteriously absent from the updated version of the article, and it says at the bottom, down here, this article was updated on the 12th of September 2025 to remove quotes after the verified source who attended high school with Tyler Robinson said after publication that they could not accurately remember details of their relationship. This does not mean that the characterization was inaccurate. It means that The Guardian is not to be trusted, because they seem to be running damage control for the left, because they are trying to find loopholes in the credibility of the source that they consulted that said that Tyler Robinson was a leftist. Other people who went to school with Tyler Robinson, like this chap, has said he was a Reddit kid. As you can see here, he goes through the yearbook that he shared with Tyler Robinson, points him out. So we know this man was in the same classes, and he says that Tyler Robinson was a Reddit kid, which we all know what that means. And Reddit has become a leftist cesspool where they banned r/the Donald, but allow transsexual subreddits and communist subreddits to encourage, incite, and foment violence against their political opponents, and allow this to go unchecked and unmoderated. So we know the type of person that this man, who went to school with Tyler, is describing. And this is more than just one person in his immediate vicinity now. Then, Stephen Crowder obtained a leak from the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Regulatory Agency, which, yes, many Americans think should be abolished. Fair, at this time they've come a cropper. And so this email is from internal ATF communications. And it says, on September the 10th, 2025, at approximately 12:24 p.m., conservative political influencer Charlie Kirk was shot and killed at the Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. Mr. Kirk was speaking at the university as part of the American Comeback Tour. Multiple SLC 1 and 3 agents responded immediately. The suspect fired one shot from an elevated position on a rooftop in an adjacent building on the campus, and surveillance video shows the suspect jumping off and fleeing the area on foot. All of this has been subsequently verified. ATF and other law enforcement located an older model imported Mauser 30-06 caliber bolt-action rifle wrapped in a towel in a wooded area near the campus, which they have now taken Tyler Robinson's prints from. The location of the firearm appears to match the suspect's route of travel. The spent cartridge was still chambered in addition to 3 unspent rounds in the top-fed magazine. All cartridges have engraved wording on them expressing transgender and anti-fascist ideology. An emergency trace has been submitted, and ATF SLC is working leads generated by the trace. The firearm and ammunition have been taken by the FBI for DNA analysis and fingerprint impressions. Upon completion of forensics, the firearm will be disassembled for additional important information. Multiple people of interest have been contacted or detained because of eyewitness testimony and the review of the video footage. The primary suspect is yet to be identified. Robinson has now been arrested, of course. ATF is assisting in the investigation with multiple other federal, state, and local partners, and the case is co-led by the FBI and Utah SBI. This was then confirmed by the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal, and these were the engravings on the bullet casing. Ignore the editorializing. So, the messages include up arrow, right arrow, and 3 down arrow symbols, and this is a reference to the move that unleashes bombs in the game Helldivers 2, the game that was originally meant to be based on Starship Troopers and became a parody of quote-unquote fascism instead, a game which is frequently played on stream by a number of Twitch streamers, including the leftist Hassan Piker, who we'll get back to shortly. Another phrase on the cartridges is, notices bulge, ooh woo, what's this? The New York Times says, this is used for trolling with roots in online roleplay communities. This is such a euphemism that will be unfamiliar to people who do not spend a lot of time online. It's basically like hieroglyphics to most people. But if you consult Know Your Meme, this is a reference to a cartoon where furries role-playing in sexually charged chat rooms do not realize the other furry they are talking to is a disgusting man. They are LARPing as sexually attractive anthropomorphic animals, and so it's meant to be an ironic post. But you would only understand this if you are on Reddit, in sexually charged subreddits, or in a furry community, which, it seems, the shooter and his transsexual boyfriend were. So, yes, it's steeped in internet discourse, but it's a very particular kind of sexually perverse, progressive internet discourse. And the overlap between transsexuals and furries is massive. Others include politically straightforward, as the New York Times says, hey fascist, catch. Another featured the words Bella Ciao. Now this is a reference to a song from the Second World War, sung by the Italian left, apparently to fight fascism. It appears in a recent Netflix series. It's been explained here in a New York Post article. And the Singing of the song is a hallmark of Liberation Day in Italy, celebrated every April 25th, commemorates the fall of Benito Mussolini's fascist regime, and is used to insult Giorgio Meloni's Brothers of Italy. It's been used by trade unionists in May 2023 and since. So this is a hallmark of leftist ideology. It would be very strange for a right-winger to accuse Charlie Kirk of being a fascist and write on their bullet casings a anti-fascist Italian song, which is a very niche reference. Unless you were steeped in leftist ideology online, you would not be putting furry and anti-fascist references on your rifle rounds. The reference to furry subculture, yet again, backed up by an article from the New York Post. And this references a chap called Lance Twiggs. Now, Lance Twiggs is apparently the 22-year-old trans-identifying boyfriend, so male who identifies as a woman, aspirational pro-gamer who is in a relationship with Tyler Robinson, and so far seems to be cooperating with the investigation. Made a post on Reddit in 2022 saying, "We are riding with Biden on this glorious subreddit," so both men are anti-Trump. In another Reddit post, Twiggs has mentioned that he was getting targeted ads for treatment for his schizophrenia and other mental conditions. Quote, "I've been getting recommended treatments for schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, and a brain tumor recently by my social media advertisements. This meme is perfect. Thanks." So this is clearly a mentally unstable trans-identifying individual who dresses in animal costumes and is anti-Trump. Robinson also had an account on a website called furaffinity.net, and I'll take the New York Post's word for it here, features sexualized images of cartoon animal characters, and they found an account that corresponds to a name that Robinson used across all sorts of different other websites. Andy No, who has been reporting on the violence committed by Antifa thugs from Portland but across America for some time, and who had to flee America because of threats against his life by Antifa, has also pointed out that the lyrics of Bella Ciao, which were put on the rifle cartridge, were used in a 2019 manifesto by the Tacoma Antifa gunman when he shot at and threw explosives at an ICE facility. So this has long been a feature of anti-fascist, Antifa, terrorist discourse. Yet again, if Tyler Robinson was on the right, why would he be referencing this? The only tenuous link I have seen is people saying that there was a Groyper War Spotify playlist where Bella Ciao was featured. That seems tenuous because Groypers would not accuse Charlie Kirk of being a fascist. They would accuse him of being insufficiently right-wing and slavishly loyal to Israel. This was the entire point of Nick Fuentes declaring a Groyper War on Charlie Kirk about 7 years ago now, to try and nudge him towards taking harder line positions on things like gay marriage and immigration and American identity. And Charlie Kirk and Nick Fuentes, despite vehemently disagreeing on all sorts of things, never encouraged violence against one another. Nick was scathing throughout the years against Charlie Kirk, but has attempted to be conciliatory after this shooting, and I don't think he is to blame for this. Now, I don't think I register on Nick's radar, and I don't know what opinion the Groypers would have of me. I would assume that they would judge me as insufficiently focused on the presence of Israeli influence in American politics, because it's just not my issue. However, it is disingenuous to blame him for Kirk's assassination, and as we will go on to shortly, that is exactly what lots of people are trying to do. Let's talk about Tyler Robinson's roommate. This is Lance Twiggs. He was living with Tyler Robinson for some time. He, according to his Reddit posts, has been taking hormone replacement therapy for his gender dysphoria. So he's been taking cross-sex hormones and identifying as a woman. Apparently, according to his Steam account, as of December 2024, he changed his name to Luna. This is who Tyler Robinson was living with. So if he is accusing Charlie Kirk of being a fascist, if he shot Charlie Kirk while Charlie Kirk was speaking about gun violence, specifically pertaining to trans-identifying school shooters, if Tyler Robinson was consistently voicing his opposition to Charlie Kirk with family members, could this have been personal for him? This is very much the suggestion, and this is something that the investigation believe. A family member of Twiggs told the New York Post, and they asked not to be identified, that Twigs was the black sheep of the St. George, Utah family, but declined to speculate on a romantic relationship between the two men. She said she didn't know her relatives' politics or whether Twigs was transitioning to become a woman, but added that it wouldn't surprise her. The family member said she knew Twigs was brought in for questioning by the police. The Post observed Saturday that no one was at the $1,800 per month townhouse Robinson and Twigs were believed to have shared. Andy Ngo has done a lot of important work here, compiling the investigation into Tyler Robinson's roommate, Lance. However, lots of this stuff, and it must be acknowledged, first came from Anons, like Kanekoa the Great, like ANC Aesthetics. There are other Anons who have done some excellent investigative work over the last week, who I can't remember and cannot name, but show your appreciation, support their work, follow them on X. Anons occupy a very important space in the discourse, and even though they can nip at the heels of those of us who show our face on camera and stand behind our words, I think there needs to be a rapprochement, a kind of mutual understanding between the Anons and public-facing figures like myself or even the late Charlie Kirk, to say that we exist in the same ecosystem, we're fighting the same battle here against people who want to see us dead for what we believe. And so I just want to acknowledge the hard work that you guys have done. So Andy reports here that Lance Twiggs' social media history remains online, and he has reviewed it to confirm his transgender identity. On the video game platform Steam, where Twiggs is very active, he used the screen name Fluxolotl, according to a US government source that he spoke to, on condition of anonymity. That account's prior usernames match those on one of Twiggs' TikTok profiles, Lancelotl and Lancelot, which displays his face. Here's his Steam account, here's a TikTok account. In December 2024, Twiggs changed his preferred display name on Steam from Lance to Luna. A search of Reddit for usernames connected to his Steam username history revealed a match, Lancelot3 with the display name Flux. Biographical details on the Reddit account line up with Twiggs's. That account was highly active on the R4Tran subreddit. In November 2024, Twiggs posted about his anxiety with injecting cross-sex hormones. Replying to a thread on injection pain, he wrote, "Seriously, sometimes it's about just muscle memory. Sometimes I've got to get buzzed on something so I'm not too anxious about it." So this person was taking some kind of drug in addition to cross-sex hormones. And this was the person who was living with Tyler Robinson. Tyler Robinson, who was calling Charlie Kirk a fascist, presumably for his political opinions, and therefore wanted to kill him. So the suggestion that Tyler Robinson is a right-winger rather than a leftist, Antifa, trans activist is dishonest. Ngo continues. Around the same time, he responded to a now deleted post lamenting about the re-election win of Donald Trump and what it means for transgender people. Quote, "Trump winning has motivated me to finally fix my life," the 4Tran post read. "I won't let these and I can't say that, who want me to be miserable to win. I'll be independent, fit, happy, and trans, and they can't stop me." So again, there is some contempt displayed for Trump supporters and straight, not sexually confused people. Twiggs responded, "Honestly, same. I realized after a bit of dooming that even if I was overall hiding from the local public now, my life socially wouldn't really change, which was more depressing than any election lol. So, working on that probably is, my New Year's resolution." Twiggs also had a locked Instagram account that features a cartoon of a female Garfield furry. So again, they are enmeshed in the furry subculture. The New York Times reported that Robinson's Discord avatar was of the human owner character of Garfield. So they're engaged in some kind of weird animal owner pet roleplay here. Disgusting. No wonder people with such warped appetites commit such heinous actions. Twiggs was raised in a devout Mormon family but said he left the faith. On the r/ex-Christian subreddit, he claimed he was expelled from his family home after refusing religious spiritual help. Quote, "Was told I was possessed by a demon and then within 30 minutes kicked out of the house because I started laughing and wouldn't go to the bishop for a blessing," Twiggs wrote. "Later found out they just didn't like me and were looking for a way to get me out of the house. Wasn't even 18 at the time." Twiggs added, "If you have to deal with wacky evangelism, simply leave because you won't be able to help them and they will continue to hurt you." So, some contempt for Christianity floating around in the Robinson household. However, no notes, he may have excluded some details about his family fallout. The apartment property that Twiggs and Robinson both shared is owned by Twiggs' family partnership. Twiggs' family gave him and Robinson the apartment in which they appear to have been acting out some weird, furry, gay fetish. And stewing in their very online resentment of Trump supporters, Christians, and conservatives. The kind of politics that Charlie Kirk practiced and was an avatar of before he was killed. Twiggs was mentioned in the Utah criminal complaint against Robinson as an unnamed roommate who cooperated with investigators after being contacted. Robinson allegedly sent his trans partner messages related to the shooting. Surveillance video of the suspected gunman near the campus shows him appearing to communicate with someone on his phone. Twiggs has, of course, not been accused of any crime yet. However, people are investigating co-conspirators who might have known about the shooting ahead of time or were informed about the shooting and did not alert the authorities, because it is important that Twiggs, as we'll go through in a moment, turned over lots of messages to the FBI and has been cooperating with the investigation. Kash Patel also mentions that there was a handwritten note that he believes was in the apartment that both Twiggs and Tyler Robinson shared. And he says that, quote, he strongly suggested the suspect's trans lover knew of a pre-written Charlie Kirk kill note at the apartment that was then later destroyed. We have since learned that the note, even though it has been destroyed, we have found forensic evidence of the note. We have confirmed what the note says because of our aggressive interview posture at the FBI. Now, people have been criticizing Kash Patel for his conduct during this. I think Kash Patel is shaken and a little in over his head, but I appreciate the transparency that he is demonstrating by doing these interviews and keeping the public updated on the investigation. According to Axios, investigators are probing whether Robinson was motivated by Kirk's outspoken criticism of transgenderism. Kirk was, of course, in the middle of answering a question about transgender gun violence when Robinson shot him. Axios is also reporting that investigators are examining whether radical leftist groups in Utah played a role in Robinson's alleged assassination plan. One unnamed group had scrubbed its social media after the shooting, Axios reported. There are furry and armed LGBT groups in Utah that have posted in recent days. Now, the FBI are treating Twiggs not as his roommate, but as his gay lover. This was reported originally by Brooke Singman, and it says, one FBI official told Fox News the individual had been extremely cooperative and said the person had no idea Robinson was allegedly planning to assassinate the Turning Point USA founder. This is now to be questioned. The person is not currently accused of any criminal activity in connection with the assassination. Bureau officials confirmed that Tyler Robinson was in a romantic relationship with, at the time, the unnamed person that we now know as Lance/Luna. And in an interview with Wisconsin Right Now, a family member of Lance Twiggs said, quote, he, Lance Twiggs, is very angry with anyone who is supportive of conservative ideals and Christian values. As far as I know, he was not going by any other name. That seems to have been incorrect. I just know he was in the process of transitioning. I know he was trying to take different medications. They did live together, the family member of Lance Twiggs told Wisconsin Right Now, in the exclusive interview on the phone on September the 13th. The relative told Wisconsin Right Now about having heard secondhand from other family members that Lance had allegedly, quote, wished horrible things on people. I've really distanced themselves. There was allegedly evil inside and only getting worse. Relative alleged that Lance Twiggs is not mentally well at all. Asked whether Lance was transgender and transitioning, the family member alleged, this is true. I can't be sure of when it started. I have suspicions it would have been about 4 years. The family member alleged to Wisconsin Right Now that Robinson was Lance Twiggs' boyfriend. Quote, I knew he had a boyfriend. I never met him. None of us had. Asked how the relative knew Robinson was allegedly Lance Twiggs' boyfriend, the relative responded, Lance disclosed that. Not to me directly. He wanted to have lunch with other family members to introduce his boyfriend. The relative said the relative had avoided having anything to do with Lance for about 4 years. I know the reason I had nothing to do with him is he is full of evil and hatred. While this is extremely shocking, I was afraid he might hurt someone. The family member alleged, saying this belief was based on things he would say to family members. The relative declined to be more specific. For at least 4 years I haven't talked to him. I did not want him around my personal family. He's not a healthy person. He is very angry with anyone who is supportive of conservative ideals and Christian values. So he, Lance Twiggs, seems to, going by his public Reddit posts, be identifying as transgender, harbor a grudge against Trump supporters and Christians and people who are not suffering from an incongruity between their biology and their sexual and gender identity, and perhaps by the statements by family members, school friends, both he and Robinson seem to have had a serious prejudice against conservatives, Christians, and people who would not buy into their delusion that men could become women. And this appears to have been the motivating factor for taking the life of Charlie Kirk. There was also a neighbor who was interviewed on local TV, and this was obtained by The Sun, and he said that he saw Robinson and Twiggs holding hands and kissing in the neighborhood. So, as he said, good guy friends don't typically tend to be that intimate without being in some kind of relationship. So, it seems that Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs were in a gay, trans-identifying relationship with one another, and this might have been a compounding factor for why he shot Charlie Kirk. They've also allegedly found Tyler Robinson's Spotify account, and it includes favourite songs from an artist called Johnny Jash, who, as you can see here, engages in cross-dressing and makes songs about transgenderism, talking about the colours of the trans flag, wearing heels and makeup. You can see there's a trend here. Axios are reporting that Lance's cooperation with the investigation might provide some helpful clues as to Robinson's motive, in case they were unclear by everything I've presented to you so far. Axios write, authorities are investigating whether Tyler Robinson, suspected of killing Charlie Kirk, believed Kirk's views on gender identity were hateful to people like Robinson's transgender roommate. 6 sources familiar with the case tell Axios. So this is credible. It appears that Kirk's views on transgenderism were the reason that Robinson killed Kirk. Investigators believe Robinson's anger at Kirk's views could be a key to establishing a motive for the slaying of the, and I hate Axios' editorializing here, controversial activists whose death sent shockwaves through American politics. This word wasn't needed at all. All of the mythology around Charlie Kirk, a polite and gracious family man, is trying to put the onus on him for his own assassination. And by obfuscating the blame for the individual who pulled the trigger, by bringing up Kirk's crimes against progressivism as if they're some kind of justification, you are creating excuses, and excuses are a promise of repetition. You are creating a permission structure, this is the word that Ben Shapiro has been using in recent days, for violence. Because if you tell people that their political opponents are fascists, Nazis, on the precipice of committing a trans genocide, you then put deranged people with very little to lose, especially if they have castrated and sterilized themselves, in a position where they think taking defensive action means violence against their political opponents. And if truly you felt you were fighting Hitler, would violence not be justified? So by calling Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump, and all of his conservative co-belligerents and Trump supporters fascists, Nazis, racists, Confederates, and all the other slurs under the sun, you are putting a target on their back. And it might have been the case that 10 years ago, they were just doing it to shut you up, but they know what they're doing now. This is dangerous, and people are still continuing to do it, even after Charlie Kirk is dead, because his killer called him a fascist. According to Axios, the roommate, Lance, said that he was aghast when he found out by According to Axios, Lance was aghast when he found out about Charlie Kirk's death, and he said to the investigators, that's what's happened? Oh my god, no, here are all the messages. So, they exchanged messages, which means that he may or may not have been tipped off ahead of time by his roommate about the plan to kill Charlie Kirk, or in the days between killing Charlie Kirk and turning himself in. There were 2 days. Where was he during that time? Who was he talking to? If Lance knew something and did not inform the police, he could be charged as a co-conspirator. If other people knew something and did not inform the police, and it seems to be the suggestion that there were people who did, they should also be charged as co-conspirators. The phone messages indicated a sender listed as Tyler had mentioned that after the shooting, he had wrapped his rifle in a towel and stashed it in some bushes near Utah Valley University, where the shooting occurred, Governor Spencer Cox said Friday during a news conference. Tyler also told the roommate in writing the rifle would have to be retrieved. What did Lance know? Why didn't he inform the FBI or the police ahead of Tyler turning himself in? Why is he only acting now as if he has found out about the killing of Charlie Kirk being related to his roommate, if the roommate had texted him where the rifle was and it needing to be collected? Again, questions need to be asked. This person hated Christians, hated conservatives, hated transphobes, was co-ruminating with his furry role-playing boyfriend, who then seems to have murdered Charlie Kirk. And then yesterday, we received confirmation that Tyler Robinson had told a group chat on Discord that he had killed Charlie Kirk. So he confessed to multiple people after killing Charlie Kirk, and none of them came forward and reported him. This is very important. So the Washington Post report that he wrote in a Discord group chat, "Hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this." The message was sent on Thursday night, about 2 hours before officials said Robinson was taken into custody. So there were a number of hours where nobody filed a report about it. A member of the group chat shared an image of the conversation with the Post and confirmed that it came from Robinson's account. The person spoke on the condition of anonymity out of fear of harassment. Harassment? By who? It should be by the authorities, because if you knew about this and did not report it, then you are also culpable. Discord provided a copy of the message with the confession to the authorities, according to a person familiar with the company's interaction with law enforcement. The person spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to publicly discuss details of the investigation. Discord have tightly controlled their output whenever a shooting has happened and their platform has been implicated. And we will get onto that in a moment. The message was sent from Robinson's account to a small private group of online friends, the person said. Discord is working closely with the FBI and local authorities, providing information about Robinson's online activities on the platform. Discord has said that an internal investigation found no evidence that the suspect planned this incident or promoted violence on Discord. They said this on the 12th of September, 3 days before the Washington Post reported that Tyler Robinson had confessed to killing Kirk on Discord. What did Discord know? Why did they put this out? Were they lying? Discord need to be subpoenaed by Congress to testify under oath about what they knew. They need to enter everything they have into evidence. And the thing with Discord, much like Reddit, is that they police right-wing servers, right-wing group chats, right-wing users constantly. So they know the kind of conduct that is going on their platform. And so, if they are allowing leftists to organize, to create terror cells, to create militant trans activist groups, to admit to killing conservative influencers, and then they say it did not happen, why? Why are these people allowed to use the platform? Why did they not provide the message before this was leaked to the Washington Post? Why did they deny that Robinson had used the platform? Or, at least, why did they deny that he had used the platform to plan the shooting? Because it seems like very careful wording there to say, to give the public the impression that Discord were not involved at all in the planning or the committing of Charlie Kirk's murder. But Tyler Robinson used Discord to confess to it, so are we to believe that Tyler Robinson did not use Discord to communicate with anyone in the lead up to the murder? And this is also very suspicious, because Robinson's roommate was showing the investigators Discord messages on the shooting details. So, conversations about the shooting took place on Discord. We just don't know to what extent. And Discord have not been honest about this. They were not honest about it either when, in 2024, the Iowa school shooter, this is Dylan Butler, decided to go into a bathroom and tell a Discord group chat that he was arming up and about to shoot up a school. Now, Discord, at this time, confirmed to NBC News that the company believes the Took Too Much screen name belonged to Butler. They had flagged the chat room to the FBI in November, after which an FBI agent reached out over email and asked for more information. The user emailed the FBI agent screenshots of the server but did not hear back. The user said their report to the FBI did not include mention of the user took too much. The chat room was closed before the shooting. The FBI declined to comment. So not only were the FBI totally useless under the Biden administration, but Discord themselves did not persistently flag the user that ended up committing this school shooting. Bear in mind it claimed the life of a 6th grader and the principal before he shot himself to death. And this shooter went by non-binary pronouns. He persistently posted on TikTok and on Discord with the trans flag and the pride flag. This was another transgender shooter who operated using Discord. Much like Robinson and as implicated by his use of Discord, his boyfriend Lance. What did Discord know? Are they being honest? They should be subpoenaed. Quick update while this video is exporting, House Rep James Comer has now invited the CEOs of Discord, Steam, Twitch and Reddit to testify about the radicalization of their users before the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. We might get some answers on why Twitch allowed Hassan Piker to promote violence for years, and even promoted him while doing so, and why Discord has not been quite so forthcoming about the potential planning of multiple mass shooting events and murders, like those of Charlie Kirk, on their platform. Also, why was Reddit banning conservatives for perfectly polite and lawfully expressed opinions, while transgender subreddits and Antifa subreddits still fester and foment violence on their platform? Finally, the reason they should be subpoenaed, and I'm sure we'll hear about this in the coming days, is because it is believed that Robinson did not just share his plans or confess his guilt to one person. It is believed that people knew the shooting was going to happen ahead of time and gloated about it, because the Anons, like Aesthetica here, who have been doing great investigative work, have found a number of trans activists and trans accounts who were saying, before Kirk's shooting on the 10th of September, that something was going to happen in Utah. We have this account here that says, "You guys, I have something big coming soon," posted on the 5th of September. "Just be sure to check the news. You'll know it when you see it." And then on the 10th, after Kirk's death, he said, "Well, that's that. Another chud bites the dust." Here's another one. "Charlie Kirk is coming to my college tomorrow. I really hope someone evaporates him, literally. And then, let's just say something big will happen tomorrow." Now, were these just provocative, dangerous online posters, or did they have prior knowledge of Kirk's assassination? Were they part of a trans activist terror cell organizing via Discord or another social media app? The FBI needs to look into this. They need to investigate this. They need to charge all co-conspirators. They need to charge anyone who had knowledge of the shooting, who did not come forward and present Tyler Robinson as at least a suspect to the authorities. But the problem is, people are realizing that there are thousands of people who think like this, who have been brainwashed, hypnotized by cable news, communist Twitch streamers, social media, who have been drugged up, who have been turned into the foot soldiers of an ideology that wants to see its political opponents killed, that are not open to debating their ideas, to resolving their disputes through non-violent discussion, and who equate words with violence and will respond in kind. And this is the much larger problem than just catching Kirk's killer. Because people have realized they are now in a country full of people who will commit and excuse acts of domestic terror because they do not like your political opinions. While recording, we received some updates. George Zinn, the 71-year-old initial suspect who was detained at the scene for claiming credit for the shooting, has now been charged by the police. Zinn told the police, after yelling, "I shot him, now shoot me," that his intention was to distract the police and provide Tyler Robinson cover to escape. How do you have a country when your average boomer is radicalized by cable news so much that when their political opponent is shot through the throat in front of thousands of people, their instinct is to leap up and claim credit for it so that the killer can get away? During a police interview, Zinn said he didn't kill Kirk, but wanted to cause a distraction to, quote, draw attention from the real shooter. The faux shooter made a similarly strange and opaque comment after being transported to a local hospital due to a medical condition, saying he wanted to be a martyr for the person who was shot. He is charged with obstruction of justice, which is a second-degree felony. During the aftermath of the shooting, his pants fell down as he was being hauled away by police, and he was yelling, "Shoot me." He has also been charged additionally with possession of child sexual exploitation material. So, just like with the Kyle Rittenhouse case, when Kyle fired upon 3 Antifa protesters who were trying to attack him, he happened to hit a burglar, a wife beater, and a child molester. And this time, the gadfly in question, who attempted to distract from Tyler Robinson shooting Charlie Kirk, is himself a pedophile. Says a lot about that side, doesn't it? Zinn was charged with 4 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor on Monday after investigators found more than 20 images of children as young as 5 years old. When convicted, he should hang, just like Kirk's shooter. Tyler Robinson has now been charged by the Utah County Attorney. Jeff Gray gave a press conference where he detailed Robinson's motivations. The charges are as followed. Count 1, aggravated murder, which comes with the death penalty, which the Utah prosecutors are seeking in this case as well. They say here, conviction of this offense may carry the death penalty or, pursuant to Utah Code 763207.7, a mandatory term of imprisonment for life without parole or an immediate term of not less than 25 years, and that may be for life. Anything less than the death penalty in this case will be injustice. He also has charged him with violent offences committed in the presence of a child, because Charlie's family were present there, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, violent offence committed in the presence of a child aggravating factor, obstruction of justice, multiple counts of obstruction of justice, tampering with a witness, potentially contorting the evidence after the fact, and we will get onto that in a moment because we now have texts between Lance and Tyler that show that he was admitting to the crime. We have details from the Washington County investigation here. Robinson's mother stated the following to police. On September the 11th, 2025, the day after the shooting, Robinson's mother saw the photo of the shooter in the news and thought the shooter looked like her son. Robinson's mother called her son and asked him where he was. He said he was at home sick and that he had also been at home sick on September 10th. Robinson's mother expressed concern to her husband that the suspected shooter looked like Robinson. Robinson's father agreed. Robinson's mother explained that over the last year or so, Robinson had become more political and started to lean more left, becoming more pro-gay and trans rights oriented. Everyone who said the shooter was a right-wing groyper was lying. We knew it. Now the family who confirmed it, the Utah Attorney General has confirmed it, and Robinson himself and his texts seem to have confirmed it. She stated Robinson began to date his roommate, Lance, a biological male who was transitioning genders. This resulted in several discussions with family members, but especially between Robinson and his father, who have very different political views. In one conversation before the shooting, Robinson mentioned that Charlie Kirk would be holding an event at UVU, which Robinson said was a stupid venue for the event. Robinson accused Kirk of spreading hate. Robinson's father reported that when his wife showed him the surveillance image of the suspected shooter in the news, he agreed that it looked like their son. He also believed that the rifle the police had suspected the shooter used matched a rifle that was given to his son as a gift. As a result, Robinson's father contacted his son and asked him to send a photo of the rifle. Robinson did not respond. However, Robinson's father spoke on the phone with Robinson. Robinson implied that he planned to take his own life. Robinson's parents were able to convince him to meet at their home, and this is why Robinson is now being held on suicide watch. He was wearing a preventative vest during his first court appearance, and he entered no plea at his first hearing. Here are the photos of the court appearance. He was wearing an anti-suicide smock. Yet again, everything possible should be done to keep this man alive and make him answer for his crimes. This is the text exchange, as posted by Andy No, between Robinson and his boyfriend, Lance. Robinson writes, I am still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I've got to grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I'm sorry to involve you. Lance says, you weren't the one who did it, right? Robinson said, I am sorry. Okay, so Robinson admitted to Lance the day before he was turned into custody by his father that he had killed Charlie Kirk. Lance did not report him. Lance is now a co-conspirator. He had a duty to report this murder to the police, knowing that his boyfriend had committed it, and he didn't. And now, the FBI and the Utah Police Department are investigating other co-conspirators who may have been in Discord chats and channels, who would have known about the shooting ahead of time, or knew that Robinson was the culprit after the shooting had happened and failed to report it to the police. The roommate said, I thought they caught the person. Robinson said, no, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I planned to grab my rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering. Lance says, why? Robinson says, why did I do it? Lance says, yeah. Robinson says, I had enough of his hatred. Some hatred can't be negotiated out. If I am able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again, hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it. Now, some people have pointed out that 1, this makes the motivation very clear. Robinson hated Charlie Kirk because he thought he was a fascist and he thought he was bigoted against transgender people because he was sleeping with a transgender identified man. The second point that people have made is, again, Lance knew about this ahead of time and did not report this to the police. The third point people have made is that this conversation is quite stilted. Whether or not this is the organic and original conversation has been called into question. There is theorizing here that this is an artificial construction to distance Lance from being culpable for the planning stages of the assassination, to try and make it look like Robinson was a lone actor who did not inform his own boyfriend he was living with that he was going to kill Charlie Kirk. And the doubt that is seeded here is because the following messages say, from Lance, how long have you been planning this? And Robinson says, a bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it. I'm wishing I'd circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. I don't even know if it had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about prints. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Didn't have the ability or time to bring it with. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find any prints. How the F will I explain losing it to my old man? Only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. Remember how I was engraving bullets. The effing messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notices bulge ooh woo on Fox News, I might have a stroke. Alright, I'm gonna have to leave it. That really effing sucks. Okay. People are suspicious that he would have been engraving bullets in the same apartment as his boyfriend, and his boyfriend had no suspicion nor knowledge that Robinson was planning to shoot Charlie Kirk. Therefore, people are questioning how artificial this conversation is. Whether or not it is artificial, however, Robinson appears to have admitted the crime and admitted that his motivation was killing Charlie Kirk because he thought he was a fascist transphobe. The conversation continues. Robinson says, judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine, I don't know. I think that was a $2,000 scope. Delete this exchange. So, he is commanding him to scrub evidence of their correspondence. We know there was a handwritten note in the apartment that was destroyed. Did Lance destroy the note? Did Lance destroy any other messages? Is Lance now responsible for helping cover up this crime? Is this the reason Lance did not report this to the police? All of these questions must be asked and must come out in the evidence gathering and trial process. Robinson says, my dad wants photos of the rifle. He says Grandpa wants to know who has what. The feds released a photo of the rifle and it is very unique. He's calling me right now, not answering. Since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty die-hard MAGA. Not exactly a radical right-winger. Robinson says, I'm going to turn myself in willingly. One of my neighbors here is a deputy for the sheriff. You are all I worry about, love. I'm much more worried about you. Don't talk to the media, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comments. If police ask you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent. So, there seems to have been cooperation with the police from Lance, but to what extent and why did he not report the fact that his boyfriend had killed Charlie Kirk, according to these messages, before the boyfriend turned himself in? There was a press conference hosted by the Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray, and he called Kirk's killing an American tragedy, and this is where he detailed the fact that Robinson's mother had said he was moving far to the left, going pro-gay and pro-trans. But the most disgraceful part of this entire story was the ABC News coverage by Matt Gutman, who said, after the texts were revealed, that this was some kind of transgender Bonnie and Clyde situation, and he said it was very touching to see the affection between Lance and Tyler Robinson.
We have seen an alleged murder with such specific text messages about the alleged murder weapon, where it was hidden, how it was placed, what was on it, but also it was very touching in a way that I think many of us didn't expect. A very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspect's roommate and the suspect himself, with him repeatedly calling his roommate who is transitioning calling him my love, and I want to protect you, my love. So it was this duality of someone who the attorney said not only jeopardized the life of Charlie Kirk and the crowd, but was doing it in front of children, which is one of the aggravating circumstances of this case. And on the other hand, he was, speaking so lovingly about his partner. So a very interesting and, as Pierre said, riveting press conference, David.
It is. It's heartbreaking on so many levels, Kira. Obviously, Charlie Kirk was murdered brutally in front of a crowd of thousands of people who watched him being shot through the neck and then essentially bleed out in front of him. And I think one of the things that the attorney here made a very fine point about is that a lot of these charges, 7 charges, were aggravated because children were present. Children witnessed this. Children were put in harm's way. And that was something that obviously is aggravating here, and that's one of the reasons that the suspect, in addition to the alleged murder being political in nature, is facing the death penalty. They're going for the death penalty. And on the other hand, there is this duality of a portrait of a very human person, a very human experience from this entire family. As you mentioned it, the mother who essentially discovered that it was her son who had done this, the kid who had got a 34 out of 36 on the ACTs, who had a 4.0, who got a full ride to college here, that kid was the one who allegedly perpetrated. She saw those pictures and said, identified him essentially. And then those text messages, and I don't think I've ever experienced a press conference in which we've read text messages that are so fulsome, so robust, so apparently, allegedly self-incriminating, and yet on the other hand, so touching. Right, with the suspect reaching out to his roommate, who is allegedly his boyfriend, who we understand, identified as male at birth, now identifies as female, and the terminology he used. He was trying to protect him. He kept calling him my love. My reason for doing this is to protect you, but also asking him to delete the messages and not speak to law enforcement. So there's this heartbreaking duality that we're seeing very tragically playing out.
It's not heartbreaking, it's disgusting. No, I don't feel any sympathy for the gay furries who were carving anti-fascist messaging into the bullets that took the life of a father in front of his children for the crime of having conversations. If you give these people sympathy, you bankrupt the currency of compassion. And Matt Gutman must be fired. That is just disgusting. And then, two commentators on CNN on a roundtable, Montel Williams and Abby Phillip, decided to run cover for the shooter by suggesting it was Charlie Kirk's hateful comments that drove him to kill Kirk. As if Charlie Kirk's opinions on biological sex, stating the fact that men cannot become women, warranted his death.
But here, I think he also, I don't believe he was motivated politically. I think this was motivated emotionally. I think this was a emotionally stunted person who literally, when I say it this way, just hear me, tried to defend his significant other, not trying to defend some ideology.
Although I do think there's clearly an ideological difference. That's why I played about what they said about the family. I mean, the ideological difference that he was reacting to wasn't just Charlie Kirk. It was also maybe his dad. I mean, his father was, according to him, MAGA. So that conflict was there, clearly.
But this is a young man who's dating a person in transition. And I'm a conservative father.
So either accept your gay, furry son's trans boyfriend, or he is justified in shooting a conservative influencer in front of his wife and kids. This man is a deranged freak. He should not be invited onto any television show ever again. He is morally bankrupt. The reason Charlie Kirk was answering a question when he was shot about transgender and leftist violence is because this has been a consistent trend over the last few years. The New York Post has an article here consolidating a number of examples, including Audrey Hale, including Robin Westman. So here are some of those examples. Robin Westman killed 2 children and injured 17 others at a Catholic school in Minneapolis just last month, and then scrawled the names of previous mass shooters on his cartridges. He had F. Donald Trump written on his cartridges. He did YouTube videos going through his manifesto and his journal, and he wrote about being that scary, horrible monster standing over those powerless kids. He wrote, if I carry out a racially motivated attack, it would be most likely against filthy Zionist Jews and free Palestine, in all caps. Never mind the contradiction that he, as a transgender identifying male, would not be accepted in the Gaza Strip. He said, I hate fascism. I also love when kids get shot. I love to see kids get torn apart. Targets like Musk, Trump, or some significant executive. So, they have a political motivation to their shootings. They are open about this. They are honest about this. And this is a persistent trend. Westman was preceded by Dylan Butler, who I already mentioned, who had identified as transgender, used the account Took Too Much on TikTok, used the pride flag in there, identified as gender fluid, used the pronouns he, they, and used transgender subreddits, and put on Twitter about how much he likes to F furries. There is a pattern here that fits Robinson and his boyfriend's lifestyle habits. There is a pattern between a fixation on bizarre pornography, the immersion in leftist, degenerate subcultures, echo chambers online, and the manifestation of this in real-world violence. There's Audrey Hale. And this was the manifesto that Steven Crowder had to procure and was taken to court over leaking because the local Tennessee authorities and the FBI did not want the public to know about this, did not want the public to know that Audrey Hale had killed 6, including 3 9-year-olds, because she hated white people, hated Christians, and had irreconcilable issues with her body image relating to her gender dysphoria. She had written, "Kill those kids. I hope I have a high death count." She wanted to kill children for their white privilege. She avoided shooting up a black school in 2018 because she was worried that because of the high number of minority students in the school, she would be seen as a racist. Crowder leaks here images of this, says, "Ready to die. Can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm ready. I hope my victim's on." These people are disturbed, deranged, vindictive, and they are on a cocktail of drugs that turns them into irrational and violent actors. She had a detailed plan about her death day. She planned to kill as many people as possible and punctuate it with a suicide. Jordan Peterson once had an insight in 12 Rules for Life that said these kinds of shooters are revenging themselves against God for the crime of existing because they are so wretched that the only punishment they can see fit for the fact that they have to live out this torturous life on Earth is to kill the least deserving, most innocent targets possible, especially if they are personal to them, because she attended this Christian school, and then cap off their own suicide note by killing themselves to deprive the public of any information that might bring closure and any information that might mean that they can stop this from happening again. Audrey Hale was also a demented anti-white racist. She wrote, "Kill those kids, going to fancy private schools with those fancy khaki sports backpacks with their daddy's Mustangs and convertibles. Want to kill all you little crackers, bunch of," gay slur, "with your white privileges. It might be 10 minutes tops, it might be 3 to 7, it's gonna go quick." Hale's diary was then obtained and published by the Daily Wire. In it, she wrote that her autistic brain struggled with different ideas, like white privilege. She writes, "white nothingness." She writes that her brain leads to white privilege, leads to an embarrassment of self. She was brainwashed by an ideology of anti-white hatred into hating herself, into hating the white children she ended up killing. She writes here, "No brown girls, no love. I am nothing. Brown love is the most beautiful and kind." The FBI had claimed they were withholding the journal and Hale's manifesto in the name of public safety, but the Daily Wire note nothing in the nearly 100-page journal appears to justify that claim. Nashville City Council member Courtney Johnson told the New York Post that the FBI said the manifesto couldn't be released because it was, quote, "a blueprint on total destruction, and it was so detailed at the level of what she had planned, the document in the wrong hands would be astronomically dangerous." No, this is just the standard talking points on cable news. And so, cable news itself is as dangerous as a shooter's manifesto at this point. It is the Radio Rwanda of the Democrat Party convincing deranged trans activists to hate whites, Christians, conservatives, and their children up until the point of wishing and committing acts of violence against them. The police noticed that there were 2 journals on the shooter's desk, 1 under her desk and 7 under her bed, so it is possible that such information was in another journal, but this journal, which appears to be the most recent, does not include any detailed information about penetrating a school or carrying out a shooting. Hale wrote about her autism, saying, "Male brain, my autism, question mark." Remember, autism is one of the leading comorbidities for young women who report gender dysphoria. The rates of autistic girls being admitted to the Tavistock Clinic was in the 1,000th percentile increases. She says, "Mom just says I'm young and young people make mistakes, but with me, it's painfully more than that, with being autistic and waste time all the time. The torture of being raised a girl and actually believed I just had to deal with it and tried to be feminine, but that didn't last long after high school ended, and no longer had to fear of being called a gay slur. It was only until my early 20s I finally found the answer, that changing one's gender is possible, but oh effing no, not with my mother. What she believes, how she grew up conservatively, and the LGBTQ, especially transgender in her era, was an enigma, nearly non-existent." So, these trans activists have been taught that their parents, their peers, are committing violence against them by not affirming their identity, that they are driving them to suicide, they are committing a trans genocide against them. And so, they attack the entire conservative disposition and Christian faith as a structure of systemic violence. And so they believe anyone operating under that structure, under that faith, warrants having violence done to them as an act of revenge for how tortured they feel about their own gender identity. She writes, "How could they not ever think of their own child suffering? and that they hate their gender so bad they want to cut and want to kill themselves first, and their preference of conservative religion, gay S, makes them believe that their child they should stay that way. She wrote, "I'm planning to die today. This is not a joke. You will probably hear about me on the news after I die." These people have been convinced that the only way out of their tortured existence is violence against the innocent. There were other pages as well preserved by the Internet Archive. This one features violent sexual fantasies committed against women with her imaginary penis. This girl has been driven mad by trans ideology and likely internet pornography from an early age. And yet, the left celebrated this. They stormed the Tennessee Capitol to stage a protest about protecting trans kids, about outlawing guns, and then raised 7 fingers in memorial, including Audrey Hale among the victims of her own shooting. These people will gaslight you. They will claim that you are to blame for the children and one of your own, in the case of Charlie Kirk, killed by their demented trans activists, and then they will use your corpse to further their cause of disarming you, of making you incapable of defending yourself against these trans activists, and then compelling you to affirm and continue to drug up more trans activists and make them more likely to commit further shootings. They are a death cult. There were other trans shooters as well. This is Janesse Moreno, who went by the name Jeffrey, and Janesse brought her son into Joel Olstein's church, Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas, and began opening fire. She injured 2 people before she was mercifully shot dead in self-defense. There was also, last year, William Whitworth, who handed himself into police and confessed to planning a school shooting. Will Whitworth uses they-them pronouns. When the police raided his filthy home, they found floor plans for a school, a bomb, and a makeshift detonator. And in the same place, in Colorado Springs, a year or so before, was the Club Q shooting, where Anderson Lee Aldrich shot 5 people dead. And in the court filings, Aldrich identifies as non-binary and uses the prefix mix, as in MX. So, despite this being touted as an anti-gay hate crime by the left-wing press, it turns out this is someone of that community who is deranged and did not feel accepted and so felt entitled to go and kill people because their conscience kept gnawing at them. This is a pattern here, and Charlie Kirk's alleged shooter fits that pattern. Then there's a trend of broader left-wing violence. The perfect example of this is Luigi Mangione, who executed the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in cold blood in New York last year. Mangione has been canonized as a progressive saint by the people who assure you that they just want to give you free universal healthcare, which means that they are justified in shooting dead the people that prohibit you from having that. Luigi Mangione wrote Deny, Defend, and Depose on the shell casings used in the assassination, just like Tyler Robinson wrote Catch This Fascist and Bella Ciao on the cartridges used to kill Charlie Kirk. Luigi Mangione was then used as the new Che Guevara and put onto t-shirts, onto merchandise. The bullet inscriptions were then tattooed on people. His face was put on candles like some kind of progressive saint for killing innocent people. The left have glorified violence so long as it is in the cause of equality, in the cause of freedom, in the cause of trans rights, or Palestine, or universal healthcare. And, as of yesterday, Luigi Mangione had the terrorism charges dropped against him by a New York judge, to the cheers of people protesting outside in the street wearing Luigi hats from Super Mario Brothers, high-fiving, dancing, celebrating that Brian Thompson was shot dead in cold blood. And the judge dropped the charge because he said Luigi Mangione wasn't a terrorist, he was just protesting injustice. And as you can see, on the banner behind them, they are still saying that the Trump administration are fascists. And they've got Sebastian Gorka and Pam Bondi on there. When they call their opponents fascists, they are putting a target on your head. They are saying violence against you is legitimate. They are saying, right here, at this protest, in favor of Luigi Mangione assassinating someone in cold blood, allegedly, of course, they are saying that Sebastian Gorka and Pam Bondi are the next legitimate targets. These people must be thrown in prison immediately. This is a call for violence. There was also the murder of 2 Israeli embassy staffers in May in Washington, D.C., outside a Jewish museum. The couple were Yaron Lachinsky and Sarah Lynn Milgram, who were due to be married. They were shot dead outside an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., in May. Police identified the suspect as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez from Chicago, who bought a ticket to the museum event about 3 hours before it began. When he was apprehended, he shouted "Free Palestine" before being taken into custody. If they believe that Jews, Israel, America, Britain are engaging in settler colonialist violence against brown people, they think that defensive action is righteous, and so anything up until including killing people who support it is justified. Then there was the firebombing of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's home. Now this was mentioned by Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal and other people with comparable Star Wars names as an example of far-right violence. Well, it turns out that Cody A. Balmer targeted Shapiro based on the perceived injustices to the people of Palestine. Yet again, another leftist terrorist. Then there was the firebombings in Colorado against Holocaust survivors by an Egyptian national who is shouting about Free Palestine. This is 45-year-old Mohammed Sabri Solomon, who should never have been in the United States in the first place. 8 people between 52 and 88 were hurt in the attack at Pearl Street Mall in June. Again, another Free Palestine leftist. We are seeing the suite of leftist beliefs here. Communism, socialism, universal healthcare, Palestinian liberation, third worldism, trans rights, and anti-fascism inspire people to terrorism. Anyone telling you the main threat is groypers, white men, Christians, Trump supporters, or right-wingers is lying to you. They are trying to create a permission structure for their leftist co-belligerents to do violence against you. They want this to happen. Then there was the man who tried to kidnap and possibly kill Brett Kavanaugh, who arrived outside his Maryland home in 2022 after the Dobbs v. Jackson ruling about overturning Roe v. Wade leaked online. The man was Nicholas John Rosk, and he was arrested because he came from California to kill a United States Supreme Court justice. He has since, according to Axios, pled guilty. It took 3 years to get him to plead guilty, but he has admitted to the crime. Then, there was the Michael Reinhold shooting of Aaron Danielson. During the 2020 BLM riots, Reinhold identified Danielson as a Trump supporter, pulled out his gun, and shot him dead. He then fled as a fugitive to Washington State, where Vice News tracked him down and did a sympathetic interview with him rather than handing him over to the police, in which Reinhold said, "I am 100% anti-fascist," and he's got a communist fist tattooed on his neck. He was then killed in a gunfight with the FBI. So, the media runs cover for leftist terrorists who tried to kill police officers and already killed a man. And they say, oh, he acted in self-defense. They knew where he was, they aided and abetted a fugitive, everyone at Vice Media involved in this story should be sent to prison. That took place within the broader context of the Black Lives Matter riots of 2020, after the death of George Floyd, after the shooting of Jacob Blake, after a series of other police interactions with black criminals. People then went out, they burned down businesses, they caused billions of dollars in property damage, and about 20 people died. And still to this day, people are on the streets who committed this violence, living among you, who wish to do it again. Vice President Kamala Harris visited Jacob Blake in hospital after he was shot by police when he was reaching for a knife after having invaded the home of a woman who had a restraining order against him for sexual assault. And she visited him in the hospital and shared a bail fund for BLM rioters, and she was the vice president. So the highest levels of the Democratic Party, including their presidential candidate last time around, have been advancing the permission structure for leftist violence. It is not both sides. It is one side. And there was the 2017 congressional baseball shooting by a Bernie Sanders supporter in which Congressman Steve Scalise was shot. Ron DeSantis reports having been a congressman at the time, the shooter going up to him and asking whether Republicans were on the field or not. So he's specifically targeting his political opponents with violence. The most notable examples of leftist violence are, of course, the multiple assassination attempts against President Trump last year. This claimed the life of Corey Comparator. It also put 2 other men in the hospital who have thankfully recovered, but Corey Comparator shielded his family from Matthew Thomas Crook's gunfire and lost his life in an act of heroism. Corey Comparator's life was apparently not enough to get everyone to act in concert to prevent further leftist violence in the United States. And now Charlie Kirk is dead. There was another attempt on Trump's life by deranged leftist Ryan Wesley Routh as well, who become obsessed with Ukraine, accused Trump of being a fascist, wrote illegible books on geopolitics, and whose son said, "I don't like Trump either, every reasonable person doesn't." Ryan Routh's trial is ongoing in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination, and he had to be silenced by the judge because he went on a crazy rant about Hitler, Ukraine, Iran, and how the court system is illegitimate. And he tried to put questions to the jury about their views on Gaza, Trump's interest in annexing Greenland, and what they would do if they were driving and saw a turtle in the road. This man is unhinged, and he has been enabled by the leftist rhetoric about Trump being an existential threat to democracy, shouted from the presidential podium by Joe Biden, which he was sharing just days before his assassination attempt. The rhetoric of Democrats is directly responsible for Charlie Kirk's death. They have created a climate in which political assassination is viewed as a legitimate response to speech by their political opponents. They characterize their political opponents inaccurately as Nazis, as fascists, as Confederates, as racists, as perpetrators of a silent genocide. And of course, per the morality following the Second World War, if you are all of those things, then it is legitimate, heroic even, to take defensive, violent action against Nazis, fascists, and perpetrators of genocide. Because this is apparently what all of our countries are built on, fighting fascism. If your opponents are the moral nadir of the post-war political order, as characterized frequently by cable news, academia, mainstream media, social media, and politicians, including President Biden, then you are encouraging people, the most deranged, deluded parts of your base with the least to lose, to go out and commit violence against them. We all remember Joe Biden's address in Philadelphia with the blood red background, denouncing the MAGA Republicans as an existential threat to the nation. Here is the archived transcript of this speech. And he says some really deranged things in here. He says, Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Now, I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans, are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. But considering Donald Trump won the popular vote this time around, it means the majority of them. The overwhelming majority. Half the country are MAGA Republicans. And Joe Biden said back in 2022, these people represent an existential threat to the country. If the threat is existential, that means your life is at risk. If your life is at risk, per the Second Amendment, per post-war morality, you are permitted to defend it. Biden said. And here, in my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election. And they're working right now as I speak in state after state to give power to decide elections in America to partisans and cronies, empowering election deniers to undermine democracy itself. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence that are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country. There is no compromise with people depicted in that fashion. Joe Biden was encouraging violence here, and it has resulted in Charlie Kirk's death. It resulted in the assassination attempts on Trump's life. He said, but while the threat to American democracy is real, I want to say as clearly as we can, we are not powerless in the face of these threats. We are not bystanders in this ongoing attack on democracy. There are far more Americans from every background and belief who reject the extreme MAGA ideology than those that accept it. And folks, it is within your power, it's in your hands, yours and mine, to stop the assault on American democracy. I believe America is at an inflection point. One of those moments that determine the shape of everything that's to come after. And America must choose to move forward or move backwards, to build the future or obsess about the past, to be a nation of hope and unity and optimism, or a nation of fear, division, and darkness. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They are not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. Again, they are saying that these people are an existential threat to you and your country. They are saying they will not compromise. They are saying they made their choice. Meaning they are no longer worthy of equal moral consideration, meaning anything is permitted against them, meaning violence is tolerated. This was from the mouth of the president. Democrats, independents, mainstream Republicans, we must be stronger, Biden said, more determined and more committed to saving American democracy than MAGA Republicans are to destroying American democracy. Kamala Harris, who then superseded Joe Biden after she cooed him out as the Democrat nominee, about a week before the presidential election, denounced Trump as a fascist, an admirer of Adolf Hitler, who wants unchecked and total militaristic power. This was after the multiple assassination attempts on his life. She knew what she was doing. It was reckless. It was irresponsible. But that's only if you presume that she did not want Trump dead. She said, Donald Trump is a fascist who wants unchecked power. She said, Donald Trump is increasingly unhinged and unstable. In a second term, people like John Kelly would not be there to be guardrails against his propensities and his actions. Those who once tried to stop him from pursuing his worst impulses would no longer be there and no longer be there to rein him in. She says that Trump does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military who will be loyal to him, personally, one that will obey his orders, even when he tells them to break the law or abandon their oath to the Constitution of the United States. She cited comments by John Kelly, who claimed that Trump had praised Hitler. Quote, he commented more than once that, Hitler did some really good things too. Harris said, it is quite clear from John Kelly's words that Donald Trump is someone who, I quote, certainly falls into the general definition of fascists, who in fact vowed to be a dictator on day one and vowed to use the military as his personal militia to carry out his personal and political vendettas. She said, it is deeply troubling and incredibly dangerous that Donald Trump would invoke Adolf Hitler, the man who is responsible for the deaths of 6 million Jews and hundreds of thousands of Americans. This is a window into who Donald Trump really is from the people who knew him best. If you thought that Hitler and his supporters were in occupation of the White House, controlled the government, were encouraging genocide against you, would it not be legitimate to commit an act of defensive violence to take Hitler out? If you truly believed he was Hitler, that would be legitimate. He is not. Violence is not warranted. But it has been encouraged by Joe Biden, by Kamala Harris, by the left's cable news commentators, by its streamers, by its social media advocates, by its mainstream press outlets, by its politicians. And this has resulted in Charlie Kirk's death. This resulted in Charlie Kirk being killed by a man who wrote Bella Ciao and Hey Fascist Catch on his bullet casings. He is using the language of mainstream Democrats. Then there was Tim Walz, Harris's running mate, who has, since the election, called Trump a fascist. He has said that Donald Trump is committing a fascist takeover of the United States. It boggles my damn mind that in the midst of a military takeover of our cities and the attempt to go into others, they're flouting the rule of law, the cruelness and the unconstitutional nature of the way they're attacking our neighbors, that the press finds the need to talk about, oh, there's division in the Democratic Party. There's division in my damn house and we're still married and things are good. That's life. I always get in trouble for it, Waltz said. I'll continue to say it. I don't think we do any favors when we don't name it. These are fascist policies. That is what they are. Tim Waltz's rhetoric is directly responsible for Charlie Kirk's death. Again, Tim Waltz, a week before Charlie Kirk was killed, was spreading the conspiracy theory that Donald Trump was on death's door with health issues on Labor Day, and he was saying that we're going to get news in the future, gloating about the day that Trump would be pronounced dead. He said, just saying, there will be news sometime, just so you know, there will be news. There have been at least 2 imminent assassination attempts against Donald Trump. And Tim Waltz has been gloating that he will be pronounced dead soon. They want you dead. They wanted Charlie dead. They want his wife and children traumatized. They want you to suffer the same fate. They keep saying it. The highest levels of the Democratic Party keep saying it. The same is not true of the Republicans. The Republicans are being accused by their own side of being insufficiently angry about Charlie Kirk's death and putting all of Trump's supporters in danger by their inaction. Whereas the Democrats are encouraging their base to depict Trump and his supporters as fascists and depose them by any means necessary. This is Joy Reid, a week before Trump's assassination attempt in Butler. She said, if it's Biden in a coma, I'm voting for him. This is about keeping Hitler out of the White House. The week of Trump's assassination attempt, this issue by the New Republic was on sale, amalgamating Trump's face with Adolf Hitler, titled American Fascism, what it would look like. If you call your political opponents fascist, you are putting a bounty on their head, and they know they are doing this, and they keep doing it even after Charlie's death. Even after the assassination attempts on Trump's life. In 2018, Hillary Clinton said, you cannot be civil with a political party, the Republicans, under Trump, that wants to destroy what you stand for. She was depicting them as an existential threat. She was unwilling to concede the election. She was saying they are an illegitimate occupying force in the government who must be removed. Maxine Waters famously said, if you see a member of Trump's first cabinet in a restaurant, in a gasoline station, in a department store, you get out and you create a crowd and you push back on them and you make sure they're not welcome. She wanted to use the physical threat of force to run people out of town for politics she disagreed with. In 2017, when Richard Spencer, the permanent fixture of the alt-right, who then voted for Kamala Harris last year, very confusing horseshoe theory, I suppose, when he was punched in the face at a rally, The Guardian wrote the following article about the punch a Nazi meme and why it was ethical. They said, most of us have no trouble accepting the view violence is bad. But what makes it bad? Moral philosophers have grappled with this for a millennia. In this case, a rule we support is stopping Nazism is good. Another is violence is bad. This returns us to a dilemma instead of solving it. At the very least, we are able to clearly outline the issue. Another way philosophers deliberate morality is through consequences. If an action brings more happiness into the world, then that action is good. Utilitarianism. If punching a Nazi means preventing Nazism, then punching Nazis is justified. The ends justify the means. Or, allow me to retranslate. If killing a fascist stops fascism, then killing fascists is justified. This is the morality of, allegedly, Tyler Robinson. This is the morality of the people that shot Trump. This is the morality of the Democrat Party. Yes, the author writes, this gives a blank check to any action if we can justify more good. For example, if killing one innocent means saving hundreds, then murder is justified. If a moral system justifies awful acts consistently, it can't be a basis for moral deliberation. While it justifies charitable actions, it also justifies horrific ones. This makes it useless since it gives moral wheels to bad people's actions. The author writes, punching a Nazi is a statement that proclaims racist views will not be tolerated. Let's frame a moral rule. It is good to be civil and kind towards people, except towards those who want to exterminate different races. This is classic Marcusean repressive tolerance. Tolerance to the left, intolerance to the right. This does not justify punching. Instead, it says people who want to see me and my family murdered don't deserve the same respect I give to others. This is the justification for violence against people who are accused of permitting a transgenocide, or permitting systemic racism, or mounting a fascist takeover of the United States. It is this mentality that got Charlie Kirk killed. It's a negation of action that says, don't be kind to Nazis, but is not a call for action, which would be hurt Nazis. This does not stand up to scrutiny, because the Nazis are genocidal. If they are committing a genocide against you, you would be morally correct to defend yourself with the necessary violence to secure your own safety. And so, calling someone a fascist or a Nazi, or accusing them of perpetrating transgenocide, justifies violence against them. And this is what the Democrat Party and cable news have been doing against the likes of Donald Trump and now Charlie Kirk for a decade, since Trump descended the golden escalator. He says, we're not on an equal playing field. They're not operating in good faith, so civility isn't even possible. They are Nazis. This is a categoric statement that rescinds moral consideration and recognition of your political opponent's humanity from them. This is why equating cheering the action of punching Nazis with Nazis themselves has no moral legs. First, cheering a Nazi in distress is in no way the same as thinks genocide of people who aren't white is good. Second, cheering is not punching. It's possible to celebrate a Nazi feeling discomfort while disagreeing with the idea that punching is good. So, they are saying there, well, I wouldn't personally punch a Nazi, but if someone on my political side goes out and punches a Nazi or kills a fascist in the form of Charlie Kirk, then we are not obliged to denounce it. We can actually celebrating it, and celebrating it is a moral requirement because Nazism and fascism are evil. Therefore, it is a moral obligation for leftists to celebrate the violence against and murder of their political opponents. A punch may be uncivil, but racism is worse. Indeed, we tolerate punches in some circumstances, such as defense or when the fists are in gloves in front of an audience. But there is no dressing up racism. Dressing up racism is a way to normalize it. That's why media sites rightly debate the use of terms white nationalists prefer. When criticizing tactics against racism, it's important to prioritize. White people in this case should consider whether it's worth voicing discomfort at tactics against racist systems, or rather to save their criticism for racist systems directly. Basically, if Charlie Kirk is killed, and you are white, or on the left, and you express discomfort against violence against your political opponents, reconsider. Because actually, victory for our political side is more important than condemning a man being shot in front of his wife and kids for the crime of having a conversation we didn't like. This article is almost a decade old. They have been stewing in this ideology for almost 10 years. And this produces the kinds of assassinations we've seen against Charlie Kirk. The article concludes, it's also true that punching won't dislodge racist views from the minds of those who entertain them, although it may make expressing them less comfortable. Maybe we shouldn't punch Nazis, but we should certainly be working to create societies where their views never gain a foothold. Maybe we shouldn't does not categorically rule it out. Commands that you celebrate it when it happens. Says that violence is a tactic to intimidate people into silence and reconsidering their political views into agreeing with them. This article justified violence. The Democrat Party have been justifying violence. Their media apparatuses have been justifying violence. They have created the permission structure that has led to Charlie Kirk's death. If you don't take my word for it, listen to the following compilation of prominent Democrats, politicians, and members of cable news justifying violence against conservatives ever since Donald Trump took power.
Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, hey fascist, exclamation point, catch, exclamation point.
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
No one has ever been more dangerous to this country than Donald Trump, and he is a fascist to his core.
Hey, let me shut down the city! We are at war!
We're in a war right now.
We are at war.
So you have to be willing to do whatever is necessary in order to save the country.
And that's why the gloves are off.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
And yes, there are many threats to democracy. We see it with these extreme candidates.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
You can only push people so far, and then they start to take matters into their own hands.
What the American public want is for us to bring actual weapons to this bar fight. This is an actual fight.
You know, this is literally call to arms.
The MAGA movement is a threat.
But Michelle says that, when they go low, we go high.
No. With all due respect, if they go low, we don't go high.
When they go low, we kick them.
We take them to the mud and choke them out.
And make sure that they stay down. And you know what? Kick them when they're down, because they deserve it.
Get up in the face of some Congress people.
We are going to be in your face. We are going to be on your...
We have to fight this in the streets.
We're going to fight it in the streets.
It's time to step out of your comfort zone and step out into the streets.
To our Republican colleagues, if you do not see the light, we will bring the fire. Resist! You and your little friend off of Twitter. Y'all about to find out.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
He's not going to have a third term. He may not finish this term.
That's the last few days you woke up thinking there might be news. Just saying. Just saying. There will be news sometime, just so you know, there will be news.
It's only irresponsible rhetoric if you presume they don't want you dead. This has been the last 10 years. This has been my experience of politics ever since I got informed and involved around late 2016. For my entire time in politics, this has been the rhetoric of the left. It has not been reciprocated by the right. And it shouldn't be. I'd like to be clear. We are not calling for vigilante violence. I am calling for the lawful use of the state's monopoly on force to imprison these people, to shut down the leftist patronage networks, to disrupt the Antifa and trans activist terror cells that have now claimed the life of Charlie Kirk. However, if this continues to escalate, if politicians do not act, you will see more Charlie Kirks, and that is the last thing that any of us want to happen. Unfortunately, it's something that the other side want to happen, because they've been celebrating it, they've been encouraging it, and they've been creating the permission structure of violence for a decade. Charlie himself, in April of this year, pointed this out. He wrote, "Assassination culture is spreading on the left. 48% of liberals say it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk. This follows, by the way, the firebombings of Tesla dealerships, the bombing of a Cybertruck outside a casino in Las Vegas, the defacing of Tesla vehicles with swastikas and Nazi slogans. This violence was encouraged because Elon Musk had the gall to align with Donald Trump at the last election." Charlie wrote, 55% said the same about Donald Trump. In California, activists are naming ballot measures after Luigi Mangione. The left is being whipped into a violent frenzy. Any setback, whether losing an election or losing a court case, justifies a maximally violent response. This is the natural outgrowth of left-wing protest culture, tolerating violence and mayhem for years on end. The cowardice of local prosecutors and school officials have turned the left into a ticking time bomb. And he's right. 48% of left-of-center Democrats said the murder of Elon Musk is justified. 55% said the murder of Trump is justified. People said, 57%, that Tesla dealerships being destroyed is partially acceptable. After Trump's assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, 17% of Americans, when polled, said it would have been better if Trump had died. Recently, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, YouGov found out that very liberal US adults, 24% of them, said it is acceptable to be happy about the death of a political opponent. A further 20% said they weren't sure whether or not it was acceptable. 12% of 18 to 29-year-olds said that it is acceptable to celebrate the death of a political opponent. 22% of liberals, 18 to 44. 25% of liberals, very liberals, said that political violence is justified. 17% of liberals, a thin, insignificant sliver of conservatives, said yes. And it is not, and they should be discouraged from this. Remember, Trump is in government, you have the levers of power, we can use them, we do not need to turn to vigilante violence. 26% of 18 to 44-year-old liberals said political violence is justified. How do you have a country with these people? You are going to need post-1945 style Japanese de-radicalization programs in order to keep your country together, or people are going to have to move. They are going to have to live separately. Because you cannot live in a country where 25% of their political faction, and growing, wants you dead. For the crime of speaking words they don't like. This will only continue to get worse. I am very worried that there is no off-ramp here, because the reaction after Charlie's murder by the press, by politicians, by the Democrats and the left's foot soldiers on social media, their shameless activists, has been abhorrent. They have doubled down. They have defamed Kirk after his death. They have mocked and wished violence against his grieving widow and his children. For example, the New York Times used their obituary for Charlie Kirk to accuse him of racism and misinformation. He said, Kirk quickly became a fixture in the Trumpian media sphere. He retweeted relentlessly with a brash right-wing spin, including inflammatory comments about Jewish, gay, and black people. Even some conservatives found his approach distasteful, but not Mr. Trump. One sign of Mr. Kirk's ascendance was how often Mr. Trump retweeted him. They are trying to dance on Charlie Kirk's grave. They then accused him of lying. Mr. Kirk rose even further into the conservative stratosphere during the early days of the pandemic, when he was quick to attack the World Health Organization, which in his typical fashion he called the Wuhan Health Organization, accusing it of hiding the source of the COVID virus and claiming that it had emerged from a Chinese lab in the city of Wuhan. This is factually true. All of the evidence has now been published by the White House. People knew this for a long time, and the New York Times called you racist for pointing this obvious truth out. This obituary says, Kirk was so vocal in his willingness to spread unsupported claims and outright lies. He said that hydroxychloroquine was 100% effective in treating the virus, which it is not, that Twitter temporarily barred him in early March 2020. Why is this in his obituary, other than to try to rewrite his legacy and somehow justify his murder for saying things you didn't like? They weren't the only outlet to do this. Slate said Charlie Kirk helped create an American culture that would laugh at his death. There is no reconciliation with these people. You cannot come together with people who mock the death of a man who had conversations they didn't like. The article itself blames Kirk for his own murder. It says, the circumstances of Kirk's killing, an end no one deserves, can't erase the role he himself played in pushing American political culture towards embracing violence. The Overton window shifted partly by his own hand. Oh, he didn't deserve it, but he was wearing a short skirt. That's what Slate have just published. The Nation did something similar. Says Charlie Kirk was an unrepentant racist, transphobe, homophobe, and misogynist who often wrapped his bigotry in Bible verses because there was no other way to pretend that it was morally correct. This is defacing a man's grave. This was 2 days after he was shot dead in front of his children. The author of this piece, Elizabeth Spears, has done such a despicable hatchet job that no one should ever pay her to write ever again. She wrote, Charles James Kirk died on Wednesday from a gunshot to the neck at a Utah Valley University campus event, just as he was trying to deflect a question about mass shootings by suggesting they were largely a function of gang violence. He died with a net worth of $12 million, which he made by espousing horrific and bigoted views in the name of advancing Christian nationalism. The foundation of his empire was the group he co-founded and led, Turning Point USA, which is a key youth recruitment arm of the MAGA movement. Kirk was able to launch Turning Point at the age of 18 because he received money from the Tea Party member Bill Montgomery, right-wing donor Foster Fries, and his own father, also a prolific right-wing donor. He was an unrepentant racist, transphobe, homophobe, and misogynist who often wrapped his bigotry in Bible verses because there was no other way to pretend that it was morally correct. He had children, as do so many vile people. There is no requirement to take part in this whitewashing campaign, and refusing to join in doesn't make anyone a bad person, she writes. It's a choice to write an obituary that begins, Joseph Goebbels was a gifted marketeer and a loving father to 6 children. They're still calling him a fascist, they're still calling him a Nazi, they are still implying in his obituary that he deserved to be murdered because of his views. You cannot have a country with people like this. You cannot have people doing this, because the temperature will never be turned down. Because you will constantly be fighting with one arm behind your back, trying to engage people in good faith with speech as Charlie would have wanted, while they call for your death, and outsource that death to the most deranged parts of their viewership, their readership, and their base, who have so little to lose by killing you and going to prison and receiving the death penalty for it. Pink News said Charlie Kirk was discussing trans shooters conspiracy moments before being shot. As I went through in this video, it is not a conspiracy, it is an observable pattern disproportionately that transgender identifying individuals commit violence against children. As I put in my tweet, you're total ghouls, and in a just society would spend the rest of your lives in a mental asylum. I think that is the only solution. Lots of deranged people who have been brainwashed into thinking there is an imminent transgenocide and have been injected with a cocktail of chemicals that are anathema to their biology and have sent them mad need to spend a long time, some cases indefinitely, in a mental institution where they are taken care of, de-radicalized, and hopefully one day reintroduced into society where they can make something of their broken life. But some people cannot, and they need to be kept away from the people that they want to do harm to. And they are being encouraged by outlets like Pink News. Rolling Stone said, the MAGA right says Charlie Kirk is a martyr for freedom of expression, but still want people to lose their jobs for criticizing his rhetoric. I think they're just going off Rolling Stone's playbook, who wrote in 2023 why cancel culture is good for democracy. What they mean by democracy is everyone voting for progressivism, because they presume everyone is a blank slate. They presume they are on the side of freedom of equality. And progressive politics are in everyone's presumed best interest, and anyone causing them to stray from the progressive plantation by spreading divisive, racist, populist, fascist rhetoric are themselves against democracy and therefore should be cancelled, or in the case of Charlie Kirk, killed. That is what these people believe. And this is what was written in 2023. Cancel culture has leveled the playing field for those who can't always rely on the government to protect them. Right now, bigots are protected under the First Amendment for fuel disgusting rhetoric without state-sanctioned consequence. The America that tolerated white supremacy in their policies and laws is the same country that wants to remind us how such forms of hate are still legal via free speech. Cancel culture is the poison to those in power that have benefited from unchecked free speech. When these people are appealing to free speech to celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk, an icon, a friend to many, a husband and father, they are not committed to free speech. They just want to use your own principles against you to gloat about the death of someone that you care about and encourage more people to die. They are blatant. Hypocrisy is not a bug, it is a feature of their worldview. It's not about hypocrisy, it's about hierarchy. It's about taking power and crushing you as their political enemies. They are not interested in discourse, they just want to see you dead. This article writes, cancel culture is a way for a new generation of people to practice free speech. The way that we cancel today is more advanced because of our rights as a people and our access to digital communication tools. What opponents of cancel culture get wrong is the act itself. It's not what we're doing that's new, it's how we're cancelling that's different. It's not the fault of the general public that society is more progressive than in previous decades. In fact, that should be the goal of democracy. Cancel culture is the goal of democracy. They said it in their own words. They are going to keep doing this against you up until the point of killing you. So, calling their employer to say, hey, they just celebrated the murder of their political opponents. Do you think they should be a nurse, a teacher, in the military? Don't you think that's a risk? That is a perfectly legitimate thing to do. And they are going to do it to you for far less. Politics Girl decided to lie about the motivation of the shooter.
I haven't spoken about the Charlie Kirk murder until now because we didn't know anything. And since my channel was created not to report the news but to make sense of it, I felt like the only responsible thing to do was to wait until there was more information. It now appears that the person who shot and killed right-wing political commentator Charlie Kirk was like the majority of shooters in America, a young white male from a conservative pro-gun religious background. After being told for 2 straight days that the left had declared war on America, that the shooter was most likely trans, or in Congresswoman Nancy Mace's words, pro-tranny, after the Wall Street Journal published an article they had to later walk back that the bullets had a pro-trans message because it turned out to be just the markings of one of the world's biggest ammunition factories, they were wrong.
She is lying about that. She is saying that the markings on the bullets were TRN, that were interpreted as trans rights now. That is just the manufacturer's stamp. But I don't remember anyone claiming that those engravings were the reason why people knew that he was an Antifa and pro-trans shooter. The other engravings that she didn't mention were Hey Fascist Catch and Oh Bella Ciao and the reference to furry subculture. She doesn't mention that in her video. She is lying. She is lying to millions of people. And this is why millions of people believe that Tyler Robinson was motivated by right-wing conservatism, Christian nationalism, or being a groyper. Ilhan Omar shared a video, sitting Congresswoman Ilhan Omar shared a video that said Charlie Kirk was a reprehensible human being, a stochastic terrorist. With his last words, he was spewing racist dog whistles. Charlie Kirk was Dr. Frankenstein, and his monster shot him through the neck. It's not often that we praise Nancy Mace, but she has filed a motion to strip Ilhan Omar of her committee assignments because she is a clear and present danger to the security of the United States and is praising her political opponents being murdered. She went on a podcast with Mehdi Hasan, another foreign national who is celebrating violence in America against his political opponents, and she listed Charlie Kirk's sins against progressivism, both of them nodding along, as if it justified his murder in front of his wife and kids.
What I do know for sure is that, you know, Charlie was someone who once said, you know, guns save lives after a school shooting. Charlie was someone who was willing to debate and downplay the death of George Floyd in the hands of Minneapolis police.
I think he called him a scumbag.
Right, have no regard, downplay slavery and what Black people have gone through in this country by saying Juneteenth should never exist. And I think, you know, there are a lot of people who are out there talking about him just wanting to have a civil debate.
Complete rewriting of history.
Yeah, there is nothing more effed up, you know, like than to completely pretend that, you know, his words and actions have not been recorded and in existence for the last decade or so.
These deranged anti-white racists and revolutionaries do not belong in America. Ilhan Omar, who by all accounts seems to have committed immigration fraud by marrying her brother, should be stripped of her citizenship and deported back to Somalia. She's been the beneficiary of the asylum system in America that has been far too generous to people who hate them. She is an anti-white racist, and she is gloating about the death of Charlie Kirk because she disagreed with his beliefs. And both she and Mehdi Hasan have said he was not engaging in civil debate, which is all that Charlie Kirk ever did. What is the option other than civil debate? It would be inciting violence. They have accused Charlie Kirk of encouraging and inciting violence, of creating the climate that led to his own shooting. Therefore, they're saying he deserves it. They should not be in this country. They should not be in America. I don't want Mehdi Hasan to be deported back to Britain, by the way, because we shouldn't have him here either, spewing the exact same anti-white bile against conservatives, the equivalent of Charlie Kirk over here in England. But Ilhan Omar should certainly not be in Congress, and she should certainly not be in the United States. Honor Charlie Kirk's memory by deporting Ilhan Omar. You cannot live with this person. Mehdi Hasan has continued to double down on X, by the way. Kirk supported an insurrection and overturning an election, supported deporting American citizens and permanent residents for their speech and shooting migrants at the border, and called for the execution of Biden. Total lie. If you don't want to call that fascist, what do you want to call it? He is still calling Charlie Kirk fascist, and the people who agree with Charlie Kirk fascist, even after his killer wrote, "Hey fascist catch," on the bullet that shot him dead. So Mehdi Hasan is still calling people fascist, even though he knows it gets them killed. He is dangerous, he is deluded, and he does not deserve to be the beneficiary of continued US citizenship. It should be revoked. David Baddiel, in the UK, said, "The celebration of an assassination by some on the identitarian left, even as it becomes clearer that the killer was meme-soaked in the Reddit culture of the online far right, only serves to clarify how very adjacent these categorizations now are." So, in order to denounce the assassination, he has to pretend that the killer was right-wing and that somehow Reddit is right-wing. Now, bear in mind, Reddit was the cornerstone of the Kamala Harris campaign. They weaponized Reddit threads and Discord channels to coordinate Twitter pylons, put false community notes on posts they didn't like, and manufacture the impression that Kamala Harris is a popular candidate. They seem to have broken Reddit's rules doing this, and Reddit has taken no action. But of course, they banned r/TheDonald years ago. So no, Reddit is a leftist platform. David Baddiel is either completely out of touch or he is lying. Then there was Heather Cox Richardson, one of the most popular US political substacks. She wrote, "But in fact, the alleged shooter was not someone on the left. The alleged killer, Tyler Robinson, is a young white man from a Republican gun enthusiast family who appears to have embraced the far right, disliking Kirk for being insufficiently radical." Why would a groyper accuse Kirk of being a fascist and then shoot him for it? This is the conspiracy theory that's been going around on Reddit in recent days. Here's just one thread from r/thebulwark. The thing about Groyper ideology is it's really messy, and one thing they love doing is taking stuff against them and claiming it as their own. But what we've got so far, male, Caucasian, 22, born in Utah, Mormon, father was a sheriff and a pastor, family was big into guns, dropped out of college after a semester 4 years ago, currently at trade school. On Halloween, he dressed as Trump. One Halloween, he went as a Pepe meme, Pepe the Frog being the unofficial mascot of the Groypers. The Groypers are white Christian nationalists, homophobic, nativist, fascist, sexist, and anti-Semitic. The bullets had things written on them that have been long appropriated in the Groyper gamer subculture. No. The Groypers would not shoot Charlie Kirk for being a fascist. We have already got texts. We've got proof from the lifestyle of the alleged shooter. We've got statements from friends, family members, and classmates that point to him to being a deranged leftist radicalized on Reddit and Discord into pro-trans Antifa ideology. And yet, Reddit, leftists, commentators, people on cable news and politicians are trying to pretend their side did not do this or encourage it. They are lying. They are trying to blame the Groypers for something the Groypers did not do. I am not a member of the Groypers, but I do not like to see lies. And I agree with Matt Walsh here, who has shown commendable leadership at this time, along with the likes of Mike Cernovich and John Doyle and other commentators, really pushing the line that needs to be understood here. That we can have our petty squabbles about everything from foreign policy to who the 2028 candidate should be for the US presidential election, or the means by which I save my own country, Great Britain. We can have that squabble later. Right now is the time to unite and to ensure that this never happens to a peaceful right-winger ever again. So, despite our disagreements, we should not be throwing each other under the bus here and allowing the left to smear all of the people who watch Nick Fuentes, no matter any of my disagreements with him. We should not be allowing them to mischaracterize the shooter as a Groyper rather than a trans-supporting leftist. It is dishonest, and it is just going to encourage more shootings to happen. Because if we don't tackle this ideology at the root, more people are going to die. And none of us want that. Vanity Fair ran an article saying, Groypers, Helldivers 2 and furries. What do these messages left by Charlie Kirk's alleged killer actually mean? So they are, again, perpetuating the Groyper myth. Byline Times, deadly memes, Tyler Robinson's far-right Groyper ties. And they went off the back of Robinson dressing as a slab squat meme and said because it's Pepe, because the Groypers have appropriated Pepe, it must be the Groypers. Bear in mind, multiple Twitch streamers on the left, including Hassan Piker, by the way, use Feels Good Man and other Pepes as Twitch emotes in their chats. It's more likely that he was an avid watcher of leftist streamers and was appropriating their memes, because these memes cross-pollinate in terminally online subcultures. An article in The Telegraph titled Charlie Kirk Suspect Spoke the Language of the Far Right went through similar allegations. Now, I spoke to the writer of this piece, and I hope I don't get him in trouble by saying this, but he assured me that he did not choose the title for this article. So, he did not want this to be the case. But even The Telegraph were pushing the line that Tyler Robinson was a far-right Groyper. Despicable. All the available evidence points to the contrary. And then Jimmy Kimmel, one of the unfunny hacks of late-night comedy, who have just become Pravda for the Democratic Party ever since Trump won the Republican nomination, is now claiming, even after the press conference in Utah that proved he was a leftist, Tyler Robinson, he is now claiming that Tyler Robinson is a member of MAGA.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger-pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. Okay. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
Disgusting. Notice how they didn't play the clip of Trump and Melania at the 9/11 memorial the day after the shooting, where it looked like Melania had been in floods of tears, and Trump himself was struggling to hold it together. These people are lying, and just like Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel should be taken off the air. If for ratings alone, nobody's watching this, and the few people that are being radicalized with lies to believe that MAGA are now so violent, so genocidal, they're shooting one of their own for being insufficiently fascist. Then Axios reported, to Axios' credit, they reported that the theories about Tyler Robinson being a groyper were unfounded. They got a lot of heat for this. They got a lot of heat as well for reporting on Lance collaborating with the investigation based on 6 anonymous sources, which were actually embedded within law enforcement and so were credible. They actually quote Nick Fuentes here, saying that he and his followers are being framed for Kirk's killing based on literally zero evidence. That is factually true. Again, no matter how one feels about Nick Fuentes, he has been scapegoated for a killing that he did not commit. Most disturbing of all were the number of people celebrating Charlie's death. And these weren't just the politicians. These were teachers. These were members of the military. These were healthcare professionals. These were people making t-shirts. These were people making 3D printed statues of Charlie's death. These were people making video games of Charlie's shooting. There were people that were riding along to the vigils on scooters saying F Charlie Kirk, then getting into a fight with the people attending the vigil. These were people who went up to a vigil in New York and started singing Oh Bella Ciao. So, again, the people that were saying this is clearly a groyper, while also celebrating this and claiming it as one of your own. Why are you using the language of apparent groypers if it isn't an Antifa activist who killed Charlie Kirk? Because demented leftists wanted this to happen, they encouraged this happening, and they are celebrating that it happened. Antifa defaced a Charlie Kirk memorial, painted in Pensacola, Florida. They took photos of them doing this. They are in the process of being identified. A Texas student spat on people attending a Charlie Kirk memorial event. He has now been expelled from this university. More memorials were defaced, including of Irina Zaryutska, the Ukrainian refugee stabbed in the neck by a career criminal, DeCarlos Brown Jr., a schizophrenic man who said, I got that white girl on camera, and has just been let free again. Another memorial has been defaced in Arkansas. This woman walked up, tore up the signs, and shouted and swore at people filming her. Another memorial at UNC Wilmington was smothered in the paint colours of the trans flag. Trans activists have been celebrating this, by the way, on X. One of them wrote the inscriptions that were carved on the sides of the rifle rounds by Tyler Robinson on cigarettes that they then smoked. Bethesda, one of their social media managers, put out a clip from their Indiana Jones game, completely out of context, that just said, you don't care much about these fascists, do you? With the caption, Good Kitty, which was then hastily deleted. Don't worry, people screenshotted and recorded the video. People will remember. People will boycott Bethesda games going forward for their employees celebrating the murder of a man who just wanted to have conversations. On Blue Sky, people were not only celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder, but calling for J.K. Rowling and Ben Shapiro and Andy Ngo to be killed next. At the Oxford Union, George Aberoyonye, who is the incumbent president of the Oxford Union, who debated Charlie Kirk in May of this year, celebrated Charlie Kirk's death on a group chat, saying Charlie Kirk got shot, let's effing go. Charlie got shot, lol. There are many memes that he posted to his Instagram account. There are celebrations throughout this group chat where he says, it really writes itself, doesn't it? Weak S response, scoreboard, FN. Celebrating the fact that Charlie Kirk was killed. He, in a previous debate, unrelated to Kirk, said that structures of oppression are cancers in society and they should be taken down by any means necessary, openly calling for violence against his political opponents. This man then was sympathetically interviewed in the New Statesman and said, my words were no less insensitive than Charlie Kirk's, and Oxford Union defended him. They've placed him under investigation, but they will not compel him to step down from his position. They will not remove him from the university. And they have said, at the same time, we are deeply disturbed by and strongly condemn the racial abuse and threats the president-elect has faced in response. No individual should ever be attacked because of the colour of their skin or the community they come from. Threats to his life are abhorrent. Such rhetoric has no place online or anywhere in society. Yes, you shouldn't threaten his life, but he is not the victim. People making mean comments about his appearance are not to blame here. He celebrated the murder of someone he stood across the debate hall from. Multiple times. Unrepentantly. He should be expelled. He should be stripped of his position. He should be banished from our country, being frank. If he cannot live around people who do not share his skin complexion or his politics peacefully, he should not live around them at all. He should be made to live elsewhere. You know who else should experience this? Bob Villan. Bob Villan, the man who went to Glastonbury and chanted not just death to the IDF, but chanted, heard you want your country back, shut the F up, gloating about dispossessing the ethnic English people because of their white skin from their own country, saying we've got the gammons on the run. After that controversy, this play pretend revolutionary decided at a gig in the Netherlands to gloat about Charlie's death. He said, I want to dedicate this next one in front of a Palestine flag to an absolute piece of S human being whose pronouns were, and then shouted, Charlie Kirk, rest in peace. He then had the gall the following day to take to Twitter after his visa was cancelled in America for saying, if you chat S, you get banged, as in, if you say something I don't like, you deserve to be killed. He then had the gall to take to Twitter saying, calm down, I never called for violence. He was, of course, being community noted here because he called for violence openly on video. But this man does not believe he did anything wrong. And so, he should not be allowed to live in this country. He should either be imprisoned, or, if he hates white people so much, he should be told to pick a country where he would prefer to live, stripped of his British citizenship, and he can go and live there instead. We cannot live with these people. We must bring back the ancient punishment of banishment for such crimes. I mentioned this on Twitter. Elon Musk shared my post and agreed. Then there's Jasmine Crockett's preacher. There have been multiple black preachers across the United States that said that Charlie Kirk is no Martin Luther King. He was an unrepentant racist, which isn't true, and he was killed by a white Christian, and then denies that he was assassinated. You cannot have people with such racial resentment against the majority population in your country living alongside them in your country. You cannot have them empowered and funded by lucrative leftist activist networks that do nothing but push racial grievance. They must be disrupted. Those activist networks must be defunded. The people preaching violence must be imprisoned. The populations who believe in violence against their political opponents must be de-radicalized, or else learn to live separately from the people who just want to go about their day and have polite conversations like Charlie Kirk did. Nels Abbey, an anti-white race grifter, who blocked me on Twitter after going on Times Radio and calling me a white supremacist in a deceptively edited interview, by the way, which is why I won't go back on Times Radio, took to TV after Charlie Kirk's assassination on Good Morning Britain and said Charlie Kirk was a David Duke for the TikTok age. Now, Michael Gove sat beside him. I'll be doing a debate with Michael Gove soon. Michael Gove said nothing at the time. Unacceptable. We cannot allow these people to label Charlie Kirk's memory, disgrace it, defame it, and have this be the palimpsest on which his legacy is written, that his children will remember. Because remember, his children are 3 and 1. They aren't even old enough to have lasting memories of their dad. Everything we put out on the internet now is how he's going to be remembered. And we cannot have these despicable racists, these people who hate white people, these people who wish violence on their political opponents, rewriting history. Why is this man being platformed? What value does he provide? Why is he being paid to appear on television? He should never be referred to as an expert on anything ever again. He should be held up as an example of the people that we cannot live peacefully with as long as they are empowered to spew their vitriol. He must be shunned. No violence should befall him, but he must be ignored. He must not be paid to spew his bile anymore. We should have no quarter for these people. Andy No received threats of violence against his life on Instagram for reporting on this stuff. Redditors were threatening Asmongold. Asmongold, who's not even a particularly political person, threatening him for saying that Charlie Kirk's murder was wrong. You cannot live in a society with people who want you dead. And this is the most worrying fact of all. It's not just prominent left-wingers and politicians and streamers who are advocating violence against conservatives, celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. It's normies. It's thousands of people who feel emboldened in this moment to take to social media, cackle with laughter on TikTok, and call for further violence. And this is why Anons on the right have been identifying these people from their own public social media posts, notifying their employers about their glorification of violence and getting them fired. And the people that are being fired are healthcare professionals, teachers, people who are in positions of a duty of care over the young and the sick. You cannot have a country where doctors would be willing to gloat about the death of their political opponents and calling the Hippocratic Oath into question. You cannot have a country which is being educated by people who are so deranged with leftist ideology that they encourage the killing of their political opponents. And this is just a number of examples now. This is a federal bureaucrat in DC who has gone out and protested in favor of the death of Charlie Kirk, who's a planner at the District Department of Transportation. Why is he a federal employee? He needs to be stripped of his position effective immediately. This is a British TikToker who says, kill them all. This is a major in the US Army Reserves celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. F. Mike Johnson. F. Charlie Kirk. This could be us if so many Goombas weren't such bootlickers and huffing Joe Rogan's S in a bag like glue. This is an active duty logistics captain in the US Army. He says that Charlie Kirk deserved what he got. Maybe he got shot by one of those thugs. I wonder if there were any gang members around. Was he shot by one of the black women that is too dumb to speak? Misspelled too. Or the scared black people from the 1940s. I mean, help me understand the context of the sympathy. Sympathy I don't have for this bigot. He got what he deserves, period. But I do empathize for his children. At least they don't have to grow up being forced into his racist bigotry. He is saying that it is better that Charlie Kirk's parents are now living without a father and that he was killed in front of them because Kirk held views he didn't like and was likely to impart them onto his children. This man is in the military. How are you meant to entrust the defense of your country to these people? This woman, active duty Master Sergeant in the US Air Force. She said, let's go ahead and wrap this Charlie Kirk situation up in the next 48 hours. His killing was crazy to see. Wish that wasn't so easily accessible on my timeline, and I definitely don't condone that violence. Shifting gears, you're really trying to paint this picture that he was this noble man trying to bridge America together is diabolical. This man was clearly racist, homophobic, and sexist. Google, YouTube, and X are free. His ideology and his words were extremely dangerous, and the fact the American flag is being flown by half staff is crazy work. I said what I said. I'm not going back and forth with nobody. Argue your mama, not me. These people think that Charlie Kirk was an unrepentant racist, and therefore the violence done against him was justified. They just didn't like seeing it. This is someone who works at NASA. This is someone who works at the Manhattan Institute. Why is there a transsexual leftist with a Ukraine flag in his bio employed at the Manhattan Institute? I like Chris Rufo. I respect his work. What the hell are they doing over here? He says, keep going, guys. I'm sure you'll find some way to pin the shooting on the trans community. If not the shooter, oops, maybe a roommate. Yeah, his furry boyfriend who didn't report him to the police. If that falls apart too, maybe check his DVR for RuPaul's Drag Race. Come on, we have a narrative to satisfy. Disgraceful person. Brian Riedel should be fired. Let's talk about some of the people responsible for this level of indoctrination. Because we need to identify the leftist thought leaders, and we need to make sure that they are incapable of spreading this violent rhetoric again. And we need to make sure that they are, in some cases, arrested and charged with incitement to violence. In other cases, that they are no longer paid to appear on cable news. If necessary, President Trump can revoke broadcasting licenses from the likes of CNN and MSNBC, who for the last 10 years have spewed nothing but lies and dangerous and reckless rhetoric, like Trump and his supporters being Nazis and fascists and committing a transgenocide, which have put targets on their backs and, in the case of Charlie Kirk, ended their lives. The most egregious example of this is the New York Times with Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker repeatedly calls for violence against capitalists, conservatives, and his political enemies. He said America deserved 9/11. We will go through some of Hassan's clips shortly. But in the immediate aftermath of Charlie Kirk's murder, Hassan Piker, the following day, was interviewed by the New York Times because he was meant to be debating Charlie Kirk at some point. Hassan Piker was given a lengthy interview after he was already called the left's Joe Rogan, so being artificially promoted by the left-wing press. This man is an open and violent communist who interviewed the Houthis while they were at war with America, by the way. Hassan deflected from the political motivations of the shooter. When asked, there's been reporting about the messages that the shooter engraved in the shell casings that reveal he was almost certainly steeped in online culture. Does that tell us anything, or does it just tell us he's a young man in 2025? And Piker said, going forward, I think we're going to see a lot more indecipherable politics around meme culture and what my generation considers to be brain rot. It is very hard to clearly define what the ideological markers the ideological motivations that led this person to do this thing, this assassination. But that confusion, I think, is being utilized by many, including people in positions of power like the administration and many other prominent Republicans in Congress, to enact some sort of vengeance or political persecution of all political dissidents that have spoken out either against Charlie Kirk or even the Trump administration. So he is depicting himself as the victim of Charlie Kirk's murder, and he is obfuscating from the fact that this man was radicalized online by the left. When he was asked about why, whether or not this free-floating anger or sense of meaninglessness or helplessness among young men was responsible for Charlie Kirk's killing, Piker says, I try to redirect people's anger and resentment to systemic problems because I'm a leftist. I'm a Marxist, I'm a socialist, and therefore I believe that everything still comes back to material conditions. And that's what people's anger and resentment are born out of. Deteriorating material conditions and hopelessness that is instilled upon them because they don't see a hopeful future. And then he blames rent prices, the affordability crisis, the cost of college, for the types of political violence that Charlie Kirk's life was just claimed by. And then he went on to write an essay in the New York Times. And he blamed Charlie Kirk's death on Islamophobia by George Bush, on the cost of living, the cost of rent, and alienation by material conditions. He says, Americans inhabit a culture of violence to which we have become habitually desensitized. There's a connection between our culture of violence and American foreign policy. Over time, our culture of violence has targeted people around the world, anywhere from Cuba to Iraq, people who serve as literal targets for American weapons and bombs, absorbing what I think of as Americans' excess capacity for violence. For years now, American politics has taken on an increasingly punitive flavor. During the George W. Bush era, Arabs and Muslims were and remain singled out for suspicion. Their civil rights were routinely violated as we embarked on fresh wars against Arab and Muslim countries, and we regarded lives in those countries as less precious than our own. I wonder if this is why he said America deserved 9/11. I don't think those thousands of people that died in the Twin Towers deserve that. Hassan does. He thinks Islamophobia by politicians, interventionist foreign policy, that lots of people in MAGA disagree with, by the way, means that people deserve to die. He says, the social challenges include rising rents and homelessness, the destruction caused by climate change, titanic levels of inequality, and too many others to name here. Our capitalist way of life, always accumulating and never evening out, leaves more and more people to deal with these problems on their own. Ah yes, the way to deal with wealth inequality and climate change is to shoot Charlie Kirk through the neck in front of his wife and kids. Disgraceful that the New York Times even asked him to write this. And Hassan himself has been responsible for turning up the temperature, constantly. He called for violence against Rick Scott. He is called to kill, murder in the street landlords, capitalists. And when this was pointed out online, and Elon Musk noticed it, and Elon Musk said that Hassan Piker should be investigated, that Jeff Bezos should be made aware this is going on his platform, twitch.tv, Hassan said, the richest dude on the planet, who spends most of his time on his social media website fomenting white supremacist hatred, has now become obsessed with me. Hassan Piker should be stripped of his US citizenship and deported to Turkey, where he's eligible for citizenship. He wants a revolutionary overthrow of the United States. He has consistently supported terror groups like the Houthis and Hamas. He has called for violence against his political opponents, against capitalists, against conservatives. He has flouted the law and, for some reason, never been held to account by the platform he makes his living on. Hassan Piker should either be imprisoned or deported. You cannot live with people that encourage violence against you and then run behind the shield of, well, you should have listened to my policies about owning the means of production before you got shot. You cannot live with people like this. You can't live with people like Stephen Burnell. You can't live with people like Destiny, who mock Charlie Kirk's widow for tagging him in the post about the coffin being carried containing his body. You cannot live with him when he goes on Piers Morgan's show and says, justifying Charlie Kirk's murder, you need conservatives to be afraid of getting killed. He says, I won't condemn anything until Trump can go on air and say all of us need to calm down. He said on a stream on Kick that conservatives need to be afraid for their safety. Quote, you need conservatives to be afraid when they go to events so that they look to their leadership to turn down the temperature. Right now, they don't feel like there's any fear. It's just memes. As in, you need conservatives to be afraid of being killed until they agree with him politically. Phil Labonte has posted a 20-minute compilation of Destiny calling for political violence, but here's some choice clips. For example, he called for the great cleansing, the genocide of conservatives. Now, this got him, I believe this was this clip, that got him banned from Twitch. He is still streaming on Kick. He has not been investigated by the authorities. He has admitted to multiple crimes. Why has he not been investigated? Why has he not been arrested? Why has he not been in charge with at least incitement to violence? Among other things he is suspected of. Years ago, Destiny called to kill Devin Nunes. Oh, could you imagine watching Nunez's eyes pop out of his effing head when they effing hang him on TV? Nothing would make me happier. Oh my God. Just an absolute disgusting reprobate. Then there's ContraPoints, who, again, transsexual leftist content creator, had an Antifa avatar that said, "This cat kills fascists." Again, if you constantly call your political opponents fascists, you are calling for violence against them. If you call Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk a fascist, this results in people that agree with your politics taking shots at them, trying to kill them, actually killing them. Then there's an MSNBC guest who was fired for first speculating that Charlie Kirk may have been shot by a supporter firing off his gun in celebration, and then justifying Charlie Kirk's murder. This is Matthew Dowd, and he said the following.
But following up what was just said, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions.
Dowd implied, before Charlie Kirk's blood had stopped leaving his body, before he was pronounced dead, live on air, that he deserved it. He has been fired. Every single other person who did this on cable news should also be fired. They should not be able to get a job in media ever again for the disgraceful comments they have made. On CNN, just the day before Charlie Kirk was killed, Van Jones, who had corresponded privately with Charlie Kirk, according to Ben Shapiro, who was setting up a debate, had called Charlie Kirk a racial grievance monger and the real threat to America. This is because Charlie Kirk, upon seeing the footage shared by Captain Dreamer here, of the murder of Irina Zarutska, the Ukrainian refugee who volunteered at an animal shelter, who was getting the train home from her shift at a pizza place, upon seeing the footage of her being stabbed fatally in the neck by a black repeat offender, DeCarlos Brown Jr., who then walked around saying, "I got that white girl," and made up that she had called him the N-word as a provocation for why he killed her. Charlie Kirk mentioned this was a racially aggravated attack, and that the day before Charlie Kirk had been killed, Black Lives Matter said black people have a right to violence. You cannot live with people who think that Charlie Kirk's murder should be celebrated, that people should be killed based on their race and perceived historical injustices, and people who work to treat the criminals as the victims. Because this is what Van Jones did. He said that DeCarlos Brown Jr. was hurting and he hurt people. He showed more compassion to the perpetrator than the victim. More compassion to DeCarlos Brown Jr. than Iriana, who also should not be forgotten. DeCarlos Brown Jr., by the way, is an insane repeat offender. He had had, I think it was 14... He had had 15 previous criminal charges and was out on bail for his last one when he stabbed Iriana to death. He has now been charged again and let free again. He also comes from a family of congenital criminals, as Fox News has reviewed. He also comes from a family of congenital criminals, by the way. So his mother was saying that he was far too schizophrenic and dangerous to be on the streets, but she decided to raise 3 children. The first, Tracy Von Trey Brown, arrested on the 23rd of January, 2024 for misdemeanor shoplifting and concealment of goods. The second is Stacey Dejon Brown, who pleaded guilty in 2014 to second-degree murder and armed robbery, having shot a 65-year-old man called Robert Haim. He was sentenced to 27 to 36 years in prison. Their father, DeCarlos Brown Sr., was arrested for allegedly breaking and entering, felony conspiracy, larceny, and possession of a weapon on a university campus. So, this family have done nothing but terrorize law-abiding Americans. Some of them are locked up, but DeCarlos Brown Jr., because of the permissive policies of the North Carolina local government, state government, attorney general, he was allowed to roam around in the streets as a violent schizophrenic and kill an innocent woman. This cannot continue. You cannot live in a country like this. You have to mass incarcerate all these violent criminals. Donald Trump needs to go full Bukele. He needs to lock up all of these violent criminals in mass prisons to keep the American public safe. He needs to ensure that the funding mechanisms from the Open Society Foundation, placing these permissive DAs in districts full of violent criminals that are letting them out on the street with cashless bail, he needs to make sure that that funding is cut off. He needs to treat the Open Society Foundation as a sponsor of domestic and international terror. He needs to make sure that the talking heads on cable news and streamers on Twitch cannot label their political opponents as Nazis, fascists, and racists, putting a target on their heads, and continue to denigrate and defame the legacy of Charlie Kirk. Because otherwise, the Republic will not last. You cannot have a country like this. Let's talk about what must be done going forward. First of all, as Charlie Kirk noted, Black Lives Matter were justifying the murder of Irana Zarutska. It was no coincidence this was posted the immediate day after she was murdered by this man, who gloated about killing her because she was white. Black Lives Matter were responsible for the deaths of dozens in 2020. They have committed and justified wanton property damage. Their founders seem to have committed fraud by misplacing funds that were dedicated. Their founders appear to have committed fraud by misallocating funds that were donated to them in 2020. They should be prescribed as a domestic terror organization, and everyone involved should be thrown in prison. The same goes for Antifa. The same goes for the trans terror cells that are related to Antifa. All of these networks should be prescribed as a terror organization. Consult the people that have mapped out these networks, like Andy Ngo, and get to work. They should all be thrown in prison. They should be monitored. They should be shut down. Nobody should have to lose their lives at the hands of any of these far leftist, Marxist, race communist, transgender terrorists ever again. It can be stopped. It just requires political will. Erica Kirk gave a compelling eulogy, in effect, on Charlie Kirk's show after his death, and she said that his work will not go to waste, and the cries of this widow will ring out like a battle cry. You can see by her face, she's furious, she's distraught, but she is determined. And we should honour her, we should honour Charlie's children, we should honour Charlie by cracking down on the exact kind of people and the permission structures that caused his death. The way to proceed is not both sidesism. Senator Langford of Oklahoma immediately started talking about both sides, drawing a false equivalence between the rhetoric of the Republicans and drawing a false equivalence between the rhetoric by Republicans and Democrats, drawing a false equivalence between the rhetoric of left and right. It has just not been the case. The right are not calling for widespread political violence against their opponents, as I hope I have documented here. They are not committing mass school shootings. They are not celebrating when one of their opponents gets killed. Instead, Matt Walsh is correct. It is time to ensure that leftists who celebrate Charlie Kirk's death are unemployed, they are socially shunned, and that this deranged ideology becomes low status. We should enforce social boundaries. When people commit to free speech absolutism, they are committing a form of social suicide, because they are affording grace to people who think speech is violence and will respond with violence. These people will not protect your free speech rights. They instead are not listening. They will not be convinced. They do not want to engage in good faith dialogue. They think you should be killed for what you say. And so what we are interested in is protecting the people who want to engage in discussion. The people with whom we disagree and who may be either persuaded or can peacefully coexist with. The people we cannot peacefully coexist with because they aggress upon us. We, in our respective countries, the United States and Great Britain, where, as I've shown, people have been celebrating Kirk's murder too, we would like these people locked up. We would like these people defunded. We would like these people deplatformed. We would like these people ostracized. We would like them socially shunned. We would like them to feel shame for what they have done, even if they are not capable of it. We would like to create the permission structure that makes Charlie Kirk's murder impossible. And Matt Walsh is right. The difference between cancelling people on the left and cancelling people on the right is cancelling people on the left is because they have celebrated murder. Cancelling people on the right is because they put out an imprudent joke a few years ago. Because they refuse to use pronouns. Because they do not think George Floyd was a heroic martyr. The standards for cancellation are not the same, and so they should not be treated the same. The incorrect response is what Pam Bondi has been doing. Pam Bondi has been going around saying that we should use the civil rights infrastructure that has only ever been weaponized against right-wingers, by the way, that Charlie Kirk himself thought should be repealed, and use it to clamp down on freedom of association, to ensure that people who are printing posters have to print posters of Charlie Kirk at their own private businesses. This is not the way. It is also not the way to say there's free speech and there's hate speech, adopting the framing of the enemy. Pam Bondi has been unacceptably incompetent ever since she was appointed to the position. Say what you like about Matt Gaetz, he would not have been doing this right now. She needs to be fired, she needs to be replaced. Senator Eric Schmidt is a perfectly capable replacement, I would say. She is saying that the First Amendment doesn't protect hate speech. It does, hence the community note down there. Pam Bondi has mishandled this entire affair. She should instead be clamping down on people who have been calling for violence. She should be pursuing the leftist activist networks that fund protests, that promote violence, that bail people out when they commit crimes. And instead, she decided to double down. She says, hate speech that crosses the line into threats of violence is not protected by the First Amendment. It's a crime. Then it's not hate speech. It's incitement to violence. They are distinct. By using the term hate speech, you are using the language of the enemy. You sound like a leftist. You are conceding ground. You are actually causing infighting on the right at a crucial time when we need to band together and focus on the enemy that wants us dead, just like Charlie Kirk. You are siphoning off energy at an essential time. Pam Bondi is incompetent and she needs to resign. Secretary Rubio, however, who can't take on another job at this time, has been excellent. He has been calling for the cancellation of visas for people celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, people engaging in political violence and promoting political violence should not be allowed to live in America. They should be deported. I also think, in the case of Ilhan Omar, citizenship grants and those who have benefited from America's generous asylum system, who are launching a revolutionary leftist war against the country that they've come to, in their ingratitude, and are justifying or celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, should have their protection stripped and should be sent home. They do not deserve to live in America alongside law-abiding Americans who do not want to see their political opponents killed for their speech. Then there's Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller has been exceptional in recent days because he was a friend of Charlie Kirk's. He appeared on Fox News and revealed the final text that Charlie Kirk shared with him, and this will be his modus operandi going forward.
There is a domestic terrorism movement in this country. When you see these organized doxing campaigns where the left calls people enemies of the republic, calls them fascists, says they're Nazis, says they're evil, says they have to be removed, and then prints their addresses, what do you think they're trying to do? They are trying to inspire someone to murder them. That is their objective. That is their intent. And when you see online, Sean, as we've seen for the last few days, tape after tape after tape of federal workers, bureaucrats, staffers in the Pentagon, educators, professors, healthcare workers, nurses, celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. These are radicalized people. There is a domestic terrorism movement in this country. And let me tell you something I've not shared with anybody, but the last message that Charlie Kirk gave to me before he joined his creator in heaven was he said that we have to dismantle and take on the radical left organizations in this country that are fomenting violence. That was the last message that he sent me before that assassin stole him from all of us. And we are going to do that under President Trump's leadership. I don't care how. It could be a RICO charge, a conspiracy charge, conspiracy against the United States, insurrection, but we are going to do what it takes to dismantle the organizations and the entities that are fomenting riots, that are doxing, that are trying to inspire terrorism, and that are committing acts of wanton violence. It has to stop. And my message is to all of the domestic terrorists in this country spreading this evil hate, you want us to live in fear? We will not live in fear, but you will live in exile. Because the power of law enforcement under President Trump's leadership will be used to find you, will be used to take away your money, take away your power, and if you've broken the law, to take away your freedom, Sean.
Stephen Miller is by far the most competent member of that administration, and that is saying a lot considering the Trump administration is the best administration of many people's lifetimes. So Stephen went on with J.D. Vance when J.D. Vance was hosting the Charlie Kirk show. Did a phenomenal job. It's mad, really, to live in an era where the Vice President of the United States hosts a 3-hour radio show with members of the administration and journalists, live, mostly unscripted, taking honest questions, and being as transparent as he is. Truly, it's a shame that the occasion is what it is to have had this happen, but this should be the standard for political discourse going forward. And Stephen Miller, based on that revelation that he made on Sean Hannity's show about the last text that Charlie Kirk sent to him, laid out the plan that he, as the Deputy Chief of Staff and Head of Policy for the Trump administration, will be executing going forward. And this is very encouraging.
Which is that we need to have an organized strategy to go after the left-wing organizations that are promoting violence in this country. And I will write those words onto my heart and I will carry them out. If people ask me, what emotions I'm feeling right now, this is something people say, you kind of know the answer. There's incredible sadness, but there's incredible anger. And The thing about anger is that unfocused anger or blind rage is not a productive emotion.
Right.
But focused anger, righteous anger, directed for a just cause is one of the most important agents of change in human history.
Charlie showed that. Amen.
And we are going to channel all of the anger that we have over the organized campaign that led to this assassination to uproot and dismantle these terrorist networks. So let me explain a little bit what that means. So,
You've got 30 seconds, so be quick, Stephen.
The organized doxing campaigns, the organized riots, the organized street violence, the organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging that's designed to trigger and incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate the violence, it is a vast domestic terror movement. And with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. It will happen, and we will do it in Charlie's name.
Thank you, Stephen. Don't go away. I'll be joined by a guest of friends just in a few seconds.
The leftist terror networks that have incited, encouraged, and funded violence in the United States must be treated as enemy combatants, stripped of their funding, made impossible to operate, and their members should be charged, as Stephen Miller mentioned, with conspiracy against the United States, under RICO charges. Whichever charges are possible within the boundaries of the law to bring against them must be brought against them. Because for the last decade, they have worked to put targets on the backs of their political opponents, and this has culminated in Charlie Kirk's murder. And they're still lying about it now. They're still lying about the motivations of the shooter, even while celebrating his death. They are still scheming away in their Discord channels and on their Reddit threads about who should be next. No more. This should be the end. This should be it. Fortunately, there are members of the Trump administration that understand what time it is. Vice President Vance delivered the closing remarks when he hosted the Charlie Kirk show. And during this, he said, there is no unity possible with people who wish you dead. And he noted the article in The Nation that I read from earlier that danced on Charlie Kirk's grave. He noted that the Ford Foundation and the Open Society Foundation fund these publications. And he said he is going after them to treat them like the domestic terrorist organizations that they are. The Vice President of the United States on a live stream named these organizations as responsible for creating the climate of violence that took Charlie Kirk's life. The Trump administration are going after these people. And I encourage them to do so.
I read a story in The Nation magazine about my dear friend Charlie Kirk. Now, The Nation isn't a fringe blog. It's a well-funded, well-respected magazine whose publishing history goes back to the American Civil War. George Soros's Open Society Foundation funds this magazine, as does the Ford Foundation and many other wealthy titans of the American progressive movement. The writer accuses Charlie of saying, and I quote, "Black women do not have brain processing power to be taken seriously. But if you go and watch the clip, the very clip she links to, you realize he never said anything like that. He never uttered those words. He made an argument against affirmative action as a policy. He criticized a specific Supreme Court justice as an individual. He never said anything about black women as a group. He made an argument for judging people of all races and backgrounds by their own individual merits. The very evidence she provides, this hack of a writer, shows that she lied about a dead man, and yet she wrote it. An esteemed magazine published it. It made it through the editors, and of course, liberal billionaires rewarded that attack. Now, of course, even if Charlie had uttered those words, it wouldn't mean that he deserved his fate, but consider the level of propaganda at work. Charlie was gunned down in broad daylight, and well-funded institutions of the left lied about what he said so as to justify his murder. This is soulless and evil. But I was struck not just by the dishonesty of this smear, but by the glee over a young husband's and young father's death. Quote, she says, "He was an unrepentant racist, transphobe, homophobe, and misogynist." The Nation wrote, who often wrapped his bigotry in Bible verses because there was no other way to pretend that it was morally correct. He had children, as do many vile people. That's what they said. He had children, as do many vile people. Now, hours before this smear was published, my wife and I had the honor of escorting Charlie's body back to his home in Arizona. We took his wife, Erica, we love you, his parents, his sister, and a few of his best friends with us. And as they offloaded Charlie's casket from Air Force Two, I worried that Erica would collapse with grief. Now, I'm a very lucky husband to a very wonderful wife, but I have never been prouder of my wife than that moment as she held Erica in Erica's very darkest hour. And I thought of Erica as I read that disgusting attack on Charlie. He had children, as do many vile people. That's what they said about him. I said the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I asked Usha what Erica had said to her earlier in the day in a private moment, and I asked Erica's permission to share this. My wife told me, she asked me for advice. Erica asked me for advice on how she should tell her children that their father had been murdered. She asked my wife how to tell her beautiful kids that their father and my dear, very dear friend is no longer with us. And as she was doing it, there were people dancing on that father's grave. Now, I have heard many calls in the last few days for unity and for healing in the wake of Charlie's assassination. You have no idea how desperately I want that, how gratified I was when Democratic friends and even former Senate colleagues reached out to offer their condolences to me. I'm so thankful. And I know there are so many like them all across our great country. I am desperate to wrap my arms around them as we all unite to condemn political violence and the ideas that cause it. But the data is clear. People on the left are much likelier to defend and celebrate political violence. This is not a both sides problem. If both sides have a problem, one side has a much bigger and malignant problem, and that is the truth we must be told. That problem has terrible consequences. The leader of our party, Donald J. Trump, escaped an assassin's bullet by less than an inch. Our House Majority Leader, Stephen Scalise, came within seconds of death by an assassin himself. And now, the most influential conservative activist in generations, our friend Charlie, has been murdered. This violence, it doesn't come from nowhere. Now, any political movement, violent or not violent, is a collection of forces. It's like a pyramid that stacks on top, one support on top of the other. That pyramid's got a foundation of donors, of activists, of journalists, now of social media influencers, and of course of politicians. Not every member of that pyramid would commit a murder. In fact, over 99%, I'm sure, would not. But by celebrating that murder, apologizing for it, and emphasizing not Charlie's innocence, but the fact that he said things some didn't like, even to the point of lying about what he actually said, many of these people are creating an environment where things like this are inevitably going to happen. A couple of months ago, I headlined a fundraiser in Southern California, and since we'd be out there anyways, my wife and I decided to take our kids to Disneyland one weekend. We had fun, and to be clear, most of the guests said very nice things, or they just left us alone. But there was a loud and very cool minority that would shout at my children, who were 8, 5, and 3, whenever they got the opportunity. "You should disown your dad, you little shit," one middle-aged woman yelled at my 5-year-old. "Tell the Secret Service to protect the Constitution, not your father," screamed another. Are these women violent? Probably not. Are they deranged? Certainly. And while our side of the aisle certainly has its crazies, it is a statistical fact that most of the lunatics in American politics today are proud members of the far left. After Charlie died, one of his friends and one of our senior White House staffers had left-leaning operatives in his neighborhood passing out leaflets telling people what he looked like and where he lived, encouraging neighbors to harass him or, God forbid, to do worse. While he was mourning his dead friend, he and his wife had to worry about the political terrorists drawing a big target on the home he shares with his young children. Are these people violent? I hope not. But are they guilty of encouraging violence? You damn well better believe it. We can thank God that most Democrats don't share these attitudes, and I do, while acknowledging that something has gone very wrong with a lunatic fringe, a minority, but a growing and powerful minority on the far left. There is no unity with people who scream at children over their parents' politics. There is no unity with someone who lies about what Charlie Kirk said in order to excuse his murder. There is no unity with someone who harasses an innocent family the day after the father of that family lost a dear friend. There is no unity with the people who celebrate Charlie Kirk's assassination. And there is no unity with the people who fund these articles, who pay the salaries of these terrorist sympathizers, who argue that Charlie Kirk, a loving husband and father, deserved a shot to the neck because he spoke words with which they disagree. Did you know that the George Soros Open Society Foundation and the Ford Foundation, the groups who funded that disgusting article justifying Charlie's death, do you know they benefit from generous tax treatment? They are literally subsidized by you and me, the American taxpayer. And how do they reward us? By setting fire to the house built by the American family over 250 years. I am desperate for our country to be united in condemnation of the actions and the ideas that killed my friend. I want it so badly that I will tell you a difficult truth. We can only have it with people who acknowledge that political violence is unacceptable, and when we work to dismantle the institutions that promote violence and terrorism in our own country. Now, our government, you heard me talk to Stephen Miller about this, will be working very hard to do exactly that in the months to come. We're not always going to get it right. We will sometimes move more slowly than you would like. We will sometimes move more slowly than I want us to. But I promise you that we will explore every option to bring real unity to our country and stop those who would kill their fellow Americans because they don't like what they say. But you have a role too. Civil society, Charlie understood this well, is not just something that flows from the government. It flows from each and every one of us. It flows from all of us. So when you see someone celebrating Charlie's murder, call them out. And hell, call their employer. We don't believe in political violence, but we do believe in civility. And there is no civility in the celebration of political assassination.
There can be no unity with people who encourage political assassinations. Reminder, that's the man that, in the last election cycle, the entire political opposition tried to convince you was weird. Great courage by J.D. Vance there. The main point of this is that he named those bankrolling leftist terrorism and encouraging violence in the press, shamed them, and said they will have their tax breaks defunded, and they will be treated as hostile actors. And lots more needs to be done than that, but that is an excellent start. And so we should give them, Trump administration, our grace and their patience as they embark on this endeavor, and also encourage them to do more. Elon Musk understands this. He responded to J.D. Vance, unity is impossible with evil fanatics who celebrate murder. And then he shared a post from me, where when we found out that Lance, Tyler's boyfriend, was a transsexual activist, I said it's time for a complete and total ban on cross-sex hormones because they go against human nature, they turn people deranged, they cause irreversible damage to their mind and body, and they are clearly turning transsexual men into violent ideologues, and, in some cases, transsexual women into school shooters. And Elon Musk shared it and said, absolutely. This must be on the table now. You cannot continue to poison your fellow Americans and expect you to have a cohesive country. They are dangerous, and they should be stopped. They are not medically necessary. They're a cosmetic procedure that has lasting mental health effects. They must be banned. Then we come on to President Trump, just to finish off. And President Trump understands the problem of the political moment, just as J.D. Vance does. It is not both sides. It is one side that disproportionately commits political violence and justifies it. He was asked to denounce the radicals on the right on Fox News. These phantom violent right-wingers that anytime the left tries to reference, use inflated, distorted statistics or examples like the firebombing of Josh Shapiro's home or the killing of a local politician in Minnesota, which was committed by someone on Tim Walz's payroll at one point. So Trump understands it is not both sides. It is one side.
Right as well. We have radicals on the left. People are watching all of these videos and cheering. Some people are cheering that Charlie was killed. How do we fix this country? How do we come back together?
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime.
Worried about the border.
They're saying, we don't want these people coming in. We don't want you burning our shopping centers. We don't want you shooting our people in the middle of the street. The radicals on the left are the problem. And they're vicious, and they're horrible, and they're politically savvy. Although they want men and women sports, they want transgender for everyone, they want open borders.
It's time to get serious. Focus up. Stop doing the both sides false equivalency. It distracts from the mission. Trump has kept this line consistent. He says, we have a group of radical left lunatics in America, and we're going to get that problem solved. He said, when you look at the agitators, you look at the scum that speaks so badly of our country, the American flag burnings all over the place, that's the left, not the right. He is consistent on this. He will not denounce his own side because they have done nothing as bad as the murder and the celebration of the murder of Charlie Kirk. Again, they're already under a major investigation. A lot of the people that you would traditionally say that are on the left. The gears of the state are working. I've spoken to people in the administration who have got things like calls for violence by leftists in the press, on the internet, on their radar. They have got specific individuals that have been named over the course of this video on their radar for inciting violence. They are focused on snipping the purse strings of the leftist terror network and its justifications in the media. They care, and they're going to do something about it. In honor of Charlie Kirk, Antifa and Black Lives Matter need to be designated as domestic terror organizations. President Trump, during a press conference where he signed the deployment of National Guard into Memphis, Tennessee, was asked a question about this, and he said Antifa is terrible and suggested he wants to do this. The logistics of doing it need to be worked out. They need to be designated, I think, not just as a domestic terror organization, but potentially also a foreign terror organization too, because Antifa cells share information and sponsor one another in different countries, in Europe and the UK also. This is the purpose of doxing campaigns. One was committed, for example, against my friend Raw Egg Nationalist by a journalist from Business Insider who had ties with American intelligence agencies, who then used a plausibly deniable story laundered through intelligence and Home Office connected anti-fascist activist body, Hope Not Hate, to dox Charles Cornish Dale and tell people the area in which he lived. And there is no purpose to do that other than to put a target on his back. Because he is not an elected official. He's not a government employee. He's just someone who tweeted on the internet. And so Antifa needs to be, the nerve center is in America, but that nerve center needs to be disrupted. And the leftist terror network needs to be destroyed across our respective countries. Because the same fate that befell Charlie Kirk could befall any of us in the UK too. There are fewer guns here, but there's nothing to stop someone who is obsessed with us poring over our content day and night, going on the tube and tracking us down. I've been stalked before. I didn't talk much about this. I got followed to my workplace back when I was at Lotus Eaters. This was a woman who was in love with me and was slightly psychologically unwell. It didn't result in any charges. I didn't want her to be charged. But it was disturbing to find out that someone could go and work out exactly what my commute was, follow me, and become that obsessed with me, and I could never know that it was happening. And this could happen, as it happened with Charlie Kirk, to any one of us. That was the reaction of all of us guys here on the right in the UK. One of our own was taken, and it could be us next. And so, the leftist terror centre that is endorsed by the likes of Baroness Ruth Smeeth and Lord Hermer, senior positions in the Labour Party, in the government, in our country here, the leftist terror network that is international, particularly concentrated in America, needs to be disrupted and destroyed. And if America does that there, it will do wonders for the UK too. We should listen to Charlie Kirk. We should abide by his legacy. In 2022, he tweeted, "The left has never played by our rules. Only we play by our rules. Our rules are what keeps our side from winning. We either want to win, or we will lose under some delusion that the rules mean anything. Polite discourse only matters to people who value polite discourse. The people celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder and encouraging more people to be killed do not. They should not be afforded the same free speech protections as us. If you were playing Monopoly with someone who was stealing from the bank, would you continue to play? No. Because you are being exploited and you will lose. And losing in this case means the fall of our civilization to a radical, revolutionary ideology that hates us for our skin color, in the case of me and Charlie Kirk, for example, our sex, our Christian faith, and the fact that our civilizations have done better than theirs. We should not give in to this. We should, as Charlie Kirk tweeted, after the death of that Ukrainian refugee, ensure that America will never be the same. America should never be the same after Charlie Kirk's murder. It should be a better place, and Charlie Kirk should be the last martyr for American free speech.